Chapter 1653. Gu Xingyin only smiled. Brother you're so good and romantic, how could she not understand your feelings? Yu Qingyun smiled lightly. Really? I hope so. The two quietly enjoyed the scenery in the cool summer night for a while. In the end, Yu Qingyun proposed to send Gu Xingyin home. Gu Xingyin's expression revealed a strong reluctance. In the hot summer, resting in such a place was more comfortable than any air-conditioned room. Yu Qingyun naturally saw her reluctance. He smiled and said, "When you're free, you can come often." He thought for a bit and added, "You can bring Qingyue with you. That way, you won't be bored alone." The last sentence was obviously because he was afraid that Gu Xingyin would be embarrassed alone. In the car, Gu Xingyin said to Yu Qingyun apologetically, "I'm really sorry. I heard from Qingyue that you're usually very busy, but you wasted so much time with me today." Yu Qingyun shook his head. "How can it be considered a waste? I'm also very happy. Just treat it as a vacation for myself." When Gu Xingyin was about to reach home, she received a call from Mo Zhongliang. When he heard that his daughter was about to reach home, he specially went to the gate to pick up his daughter. Then, he saw Yu Qingyun, who got out of the car to open the door for his daughter. Mo Zhongliang. He saw the man he couldn't afford to offend acting intimately with his daughter. He even personally walked in front of him and called him uncle. Mo Zhongliang heard his stiff voice say a few words to the young master of the Yu family. Then, he and his daughter watched Yu Qingyun leave. After Yu Qingyun's car left, Mo Zhongliang and his daughter entered the house together. "How do you know the young master of the Yu family?" Mo Zhongliang seemed a bit worried. He was a simple businessman and had almost no business dealings with the Yu family. But to establish a foothold in Chuannan City, other than having a business mind, they also needed to be well informed. For example, they needed to know who they couldn't afford to offend. The Yu family was categorized by Mo Zhongliang as one of the most untouchable families. Whether it was in the government, in the dark, or in the business world, the Yu family had its own huge network of connections. If he accidentally offended such a colossus, he might not even know how he died. The Yu clan was much younger than Qingyun. Although Mo Zhongliang had not interacted with him before, he had seen him from afar at some banquets. He definitely would not be mistaken. As a father, Mo Zhongliang didn't want his daughter to come into contact with such a dangerous person. Hearing Mo Zhongliang's words, Gu Xingyin replied, "His sister, Yu Qingyue, is my good friend. I got to know brother Yu through Qinyu." Hearing his daughter's words, Mo Zhongliang's heart calmed down a little, but he was still a little worried. Looking at the first young master of the Yu clan, he was a little too close to Yen. Gu Xingyin looked at her father's worried expression and comforted him with a smile. "Father, don't worry. I've met brother Yu once. He's very easy to talk to. We're kindred spirits, so our relationship is a little better." She pointed at herself. "Your daughter is now a normal boy. Are you still worried that I'll be raped?" Mo Zhongliang heard this and laughed. Well, he knew that Yen was a girl, but others didn't. He was probably worrying for nothing. Chapter 1654. After the holidays, Gu Xingyin went to school. When she walked to her desk, she saw a pink letter on it. Chen Jun, who was sitting next to her, looked envious. "I'm the earliest in our class, but this letter was already on your desk when I came." It meant that he didn't know who sent it. Gu Xingyin put her school bag aside, gently opened the letter, and read it from beginning to end. It was a very beautiful handwriting, describing the delicate and affectionate thoughts of an adolescent girl. After Gu Xingyin finished reading, she took out a pen and wrote a paragraph at the back. "Thank you for your love, but I already have someone I like. There are plenty of fish in the sea. You can study hard and get the admission letter of a famous school next year. At that time, you will find that compared to the outstanding boys around you, Mo Bei, who you liked before, is just a slag." Pfft. Gu Xingyin couldn't stop him. Chen Jun glanced at it while drinking water, and this glance almost made him choke to death. Chen Jun looked at Gu Xingyin with admiration. "I say, brother, you are so cruel. If you don't like it, just reject it. Do you have to be so self-deprecating? Gu Xingyin carefully folded the letter and put it back into the envelope. She said seriously to Chen Jun, every girl deserves to be cherished, let alone the sincerity of a young girl. And I'm right. When she goes to university, she will meet more and better boys. Chen Jun heard her words and suddenly froze. After a while, he sighed with emotion and gave Gu Xingyin a thumbs up. Mo Bei, you are really. I admire you. He said with a smile, listen to what you said, this tone, this consideration, no wonder you are so popular with girls. If I were a girl, after hearing what you said, even if I don't like you, I would want to be friends with you. Who wouldn't want to be friends with someone who really respected and cherished them? Chen Jun turned his head and looked at his deskmate who took out an English textbook and began to memorize words. Her skin was as white as jade, and the side of her face was delicate and flawless. Chen Jun's face turned red as he watched. He quickly turned his head and silently recited I'm a straight man 3 times before he suppressed the sudden impulse in his heart and began to study. During breakfast, as expected, Yu Qingyue came again. She pulled Gu Xingyin and looked at her with a gossipy face. Did my brother come to you yesterday? There was nothing to hide, and many people had seen it. Gu Xingyin nodded. Yes, your brother took me to a villa to see the lotus flowers. They were really beautiful. Did you have something to do yesterday? Why didn't you come with us? Yu Qingyue, she really wanted to go, but if she was so blind as to be the third wheel at her brother's date, wouldn't she die miserably? Thinking of her brother's smile that made people shiver uncontrollably, Yu Qingyue said quietly, yes, I happened to have an appointment with someone that day, so I couldn't go with you. Gu Xingyin heard this and sighed regretfully. That's a pity. It's really beautiful, whether it's day or night, especially at night, when those fireflies all rise up, it's simply stunning. A trace of envy flashed across Yu Qingyue's face as she listened to her description. She had been to her brother's villa before, but at that time, it wasn't summer and it wasn't night, so she had never seen the beautiful scenery that Gu Xingyin described. Chapter 1655. Gu Xingyin looked at her and couldn't help but say, it's okay. We can go there next time. Your brother said that he doesn't have time to play. You can take me with you. When Yu Qingyue heard this, she sighed in her heart. Who is the real sister? However, when she heard Gu Xingyin mention the lotus pond, Yu Qingyue remembered something. Yu Qingyun bought the villa a few years ago. When they saw the natural lake, many people said that they could do something. However, Yu Qingyun didn't listen to any of their suggestions. He invited people to plant lotuses in the lake. Yu Qingyue went there with her brother a few times. Every time, she saw her brother standing quietly by the lake. He didn't do anything or say anything, but Yu Qingyue always felt that her brother's back looked very lonely. Sometimes, Yu Qingyue would have a ridiculous thought in her mind. For example, her brother planted the lotuses specially for someone. He was just waiting for that person to enjoy the beautiful scenery with him. However, every time such a thought came to her mind, Yu Qingyue would dismiss it. How could someone like her brother do such a thing? In Yu Qingyue's heart, her brother, Yu Qingyun, was a man who was almost perfect in all aspects except for love. How could a man like him do such a thing like a Casanova? However, when she heard Gu Xingyin's description today, that strange thought came to Yu Qingyue's mind again. Perhaps her brother had really been waiting for someone all this time. That person might be Mo Bei. Although it sounded really ridiculous. Yu Qingyue had to admit that her brother was like a completely different person when facing Mo Bei. The things he did were also different from usual. Yu Qingyue didn't think about it carefully before. Now that she thought about it, the Yu Qingyun mentioned by Gu Xingyin was actually completely different from the Yu Qingyun in the eyes of others. She used to think that her brother was pretending in front of Mo Bei, or that Mo Bei couldn't see her brother's true colors clearly. However, now that she thought about it carefully, maybe the truth was that her brother was really like that in front of Mo Bei? Yu Qingyue exhaled. Somehow, he felt as if he had discovered something incredible. Gu Xingyin looked at the girl in front of her and couldn't help but ask, Qingyue, what are you thinking about? Yu Qingyue came back to her senses and stared at Gu Xingyin without blinking. So, maybe Bei hated her future sister-in-law? Yu Qingyue blinked and thought about Gu Xingyin's age. She couldn't help but sigh again. Her brother was really a beast. He wouldn't even let an underage girl go. After hearing Gu Xingyin's words, she coughed dryly and said, I was just wondering why my brother treats you so well. Even as a sister, I feel jealous. She shook her head as she spoke, but her eyes were fixed on Gu Xingyin as if she was waiting for her reaction. It was true that her brother liked Bei Yi, but what about Bei Yi? What did she think of her brother in her heart? Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment and laughed. Yu Qingyue, you're actually 7 and not 17, right? I'm an outsider. No matter how close I am, how can I compare to you, his biological sister? How can this make you jealous? Chapter 1656. She said this naturally, as though she did not understand what Yu Qingyue was implying. Yu Qingyue sighed. That's different. At least, my brother has never taken me out to experience any surprises or to see fireflies. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Gu Xingyin thought carefully. Maybe he thinks you don't have the taste? Yu Qingyue was speechless. She stared at Gu Xingyin with a pained expression. You've changed, Bei. Really? You're no longer the caring and gentle Bei I used to know. Gu Xingyin did not want to play along with this girl at all, so he exposed her ruthlessly. I'm sorry, but I've never been caring and gentle. Yu Qingyue sighed and said to Gu Xingyin, Bei, you can't look like this now. Do you want to look like this for the rest of your life? Both of them knew what she meant by look like this. Gu Xingyin shook his head. Of course not. I've told you before that there's a special reason for this. I'll look like a girl again in the future. Yu Qingyue's eyes lit up. Really? Gu Xingyin nodded. Of course. When will you look like this again? Yu Qingyue was very concerned about this. She muttered, look at you now. All the people who like you are girls. It's impossible for you to like them back. What if you fall in love with someone and that person sees you as a boy and treats you like a brother? Gu Xingyin laughed. You're thinking too much. I won't fall in love before I solve my own problems. Yu Qingyue asked secretly, it can't be, right? Haven't you fallen in love with anyone after all these years? Gu Xingyin thought carefully about Mo Bei's memories and shook his head. Mo Bei couldn't even take care of his own problems in the past. How could he have the time to fall in love with someone else? Yu Qingyue finally got the answer she wanted. She sighed in her heart. Her brother still needed to work hard. Gu Xingyin said, class is about to start. If you don't leave now, you'll be late. Yu Qingyue looked at the time and quickly said, okay, I'll go first. Remember, if you want to go to that villa in the future, remember to bring me along. Gu Xingyin waved at her. When she returned to the classroom, Gu Xingyin was not surprised to receive envious gazes. Chen Jun winked at her, not bad, the campus belle comes to see you almost every day. Gu Xingyin was too lazy to explain. She just smiled when she heard this. Yu Qingyue realized that once she accepted the fact that Mo Bei was her future sister-in-law, she actually found it quite cute. Anyway, she had a good relationship with Bei. Rather than letting her brother find a sister-in-law whom he was not familiar with or even on bad terms with, Mo Bei, who knew her well, was obviously a better choice. As for whether or not her brother could take down Mo Bei, Yu Qingyue shrugged her shoulders and said, that would depend on his ability. However, although she liked to complain about her brother every day, she was still very confident in her brother's ability. When they got home for dinner, Yu Qingyue said to Yu Qingyun, who was eating, brother, if you really like Bei, you should hurry up. I went to look for him in his class today and saw a love letter on his desk. She sighed and said, you just have to walk around our school and you'll know how popular Bei is. Crack. Yu Qingyue watched in horror as the chopsticks in her brother's hand broke. Chapter 1657. Yu Qingyue was speechless. She silently swallowed the food in her mouth, not daring to provoke her brother again. Yu Qingyun calmly placed the chopsticks in his hand on the table and took out a clean pair. He asked softly. What did you just say? Yu Qingyue looked innocent. What did I say? Huh. I think Bei will definitely like you since you're so handsome, considerate, gentle, and nice. Yu Qingyun chuckled and did not say anything else. Yu Qingyue finished her meal in fear. Then, she quickly found an excuse to sneak back to her room. Oh my God, her brother was too scary. She decided to mourn for Bei Yi, who had caught his eye. That night, Gu Xingyin received a message from an unknown number. Good evening, Bei. She glanced at it and pretended not to see it. Soon, she received a second text. I'm Yu Qingyun. Gu Xingyin came out of the bathroom after washing her face. When she saw the text, she replied. Good evening. She was a little confused. Why was Yu Qingyun texting her so late at night? However, Yu Qingyun did not send her another text. Gu Xingyin waited for more than 10 minutes, but she did not receive any reply. So he texted her so late at night just to say good evening? Gu Xingyin thought, I don't know what you're trying to do. Gu Xingyin did not receive another text from Yu Qingyun until bedtime. The next morning, when she was about to leave for school after breakfast, her phone rang again. It was Yu Qingyun again. The text was simple. Good morning. Gu Xingyin did not know whether to laugh or cry as she replied with a good morning. Not long after she left, she met Yu Qingyun. Gu Xingyin was used to waking up early because her house was not very far from her school. She usually did not ask the chauffeur to send her to school. Instead, she chose to walk slowly to school. This gave a man a chance to get close to her. Yu Qingyun's car happened to be by the side of the road and honked at her. Gu Xingyin looked at Yu Qingyun in surprise. What a coincidence. Good morning. Yu Qingyun said, Good morning. I happen to have a project to discuss here today, so it's on the way. The driver in the driver's seat, so this is the reason why young master had to take such a long detour early in the morning? Gu Xingyin didn't expose him. She just smiled and expressed her understanding. Yu Qingyun looked at her and said, Do you want me to send you to school? Gu Xingyin shook her head in refusal. I'm used to walking to school. I can also exercise my body. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, Yu Qingyun immediately said, All right then. Then, Gu Xingyin saw the car stop and Yu Qingyun, who was dressed in a suit and leather shoes, got out of the car. Gu Xingyin was surprised. What are you doing? Yu Qingyun smiled. Anyway, it's still early today. I'll learn from Bei Yi and walk for a while. I can also exercise my body. Gu Xingyin, she could only smile. Okay, as long as you're happy. The system said, Host, this man's feelings for you are very obvious. Gu Xingyin was amused by the system and laughed out loud. Yu Qingyun tilted his head and looked at her. What's so funny? Gu Xingyin smiled and said, It's a secret. Yu Qingyun narrowed his eyes when he heard this. He did not say anything, but he had already made up his mind. One day, I will make you tell me all your secrets willingly. Chapter 1658. The two of them chatted as they walked. Yu Qingyun pretended to ask casually, There must be a lot of girls in school who like a handsome boy with good grades like you, right? Gu Xingyin blushed when she heard the question. She denied it flatly, how could there be such a thing? Yu Qingyun looked at the thin layer of pink on her fair skin. It was very beautiful, but it made his mood a little gloomy. Because from what he understood, the person in front of him became like this because she was shy. And the reason for her shyness was because she liked him. He suppressed the unhappiness in his heart and said casually, What's there to be embarrassed about? For a man, being liked by a lot of girls is something to be proud of. I heard from Qin Yu that you received a love letter yesterday. He said those words because he wanted to get more information from Gu Xingyin, but he did not expect that Gu Xingyin's focus was completely different from his. Yu Qingyun had just finished speaking when he saw the girl beside him looking at him with burning eyes. Gu Xingyin looked at him. Brother Yu, you have a good family background. You're handsome and gentle. There must be a lot of girls who like you, right? Yu Qingyun was stunned for a moment. He clearly didn't expect Gu Xingyin to suddenly ask such a question. He thought for a moment and replied, I don't know. Gu Xingyin's face showed that she didn't believe him. You don't know? How can you not know whether people like you or not? Yu Qingyun said seriously, I'm not lying to you, Bei. I've always been a narrow-minded person. If it's someone I care about, I'll take care of everything for them. I'll even care about their matters more than they do themselves. But if it's someone I don't like, I won't care about any of their thoughts at all. So those women, whether they like me or not, I don't care at all. Why would I have the time to think about their thoughts? He did not hide his cold side in front of Gu Xingyin, which he had never shown before. To Yu Qingyun, one day, he would show his true face in front of Mo Bei. It was impossible for him to play the role of a gentle and considerate gentleman in front of her for the rest of his life. The only thing he needed to pay attention to was how to express himself. Gu Xingyin could feel that Yu Qingyun was looking at her very seriously when she said those words. She would subconsciously follow the other party's words, and then think about the interactions during this period of time. Then, she would discover that she was the type of person that Yu Qingyun said he cared about. Then, Yu Qingyun noticed that Gu Xingyin's ears had turned red. Because of what he had said. He was very satisfied with the effect of his words. Take your time. He told himself that a direct confession would frighten him. She wanted to enter his world bit by bit so that he would know how good she was to him and get used to having her by his side. He would use his patience and tolerance to weave a net around him. From loose to tight. When the prey was completely used to the existence of the net and was completely defenseless, it was time for the hunter to reel in the net. He would slowly savor his most delicious prey. The journey wasn't far. Soon, the two of them saw the gate of the school. Gu Xingyin turned to say goodbye to Yu Qingyun. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey. Goodbye. Yu Qingyun looked at her quietly. Goodbye. Chapter 1659. He stood where he was and watched Gu Xingyin's figure mingle with the other high school students who were also wearing school uniforms. Finally, they disappeared into the white school gate. Yu Qingyun turned around and sat back in the car. Young master, where are we going? To the company. The driver didn't dare to ask anything. He turned the car around and drove back the way he came. Gu Xingyin also received a reply from the system. I knew it. The system didn't understand. Host, why didn't you say it when you knew that the other party likes you and you like him? Gu Xingyin looked at the system and said slowly, reserved. Girls need to be reserved, understand? System, it understood what being reserved meant, but did the host have that? Then it heard Gu Xingyin ask, the key is, what is my identity now? School hunk. As a boy, how can I confess to a man? Gu Xingyin concluded, in short, before Mo Bei becomes Mo Bei Yen, I can't have any relationship with anyone. As for whether Yu Qingyun liked men or women, the system had checked before and concluded that it didn't know. After all, the young master of the Yu family was famous for not getting close to strangers. No matter if it was a beautiful girl or a handsome young man, no one had successfully stayed by his side. Gu Xingyin didn't doubt that at all. To her, not to mention her gender, even her race wasn't that important. After all, she wasn't a real human, so she didn't care much about these things. She could tell that Yu Qingyun was planning to boil a frog in warm water. She didn't mind playing this kind of half-nurturing game with her lover at all. It was just for fun. As the saying goes, the eunuch is more worried than the emperor. Yu Qingyun was full of confidence and Gu Xingyin was confident. Only Yu Qingyue, who didn't know anything, was stuck in the middle and worried for the two. Gu Xingyin felt that Yu Qingyue was a good sister. Although this girl usually complained about her brother in front of her, she had been praising her brother both openly and secretly during this period of time. Gu Xingyin guessed that she must have seen through her brother's intentions and wanted to match-make the two of them. In the eyes of the onlookers who didn't know the truth, the relationship between the school hunk and school belle was really good. They were so sweet that they had to meet every day. They didn't even let go of their meal time. Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue both knew about these rumors. They also knew that it was useless to keep explaining. People would always believe in their own eyes. They also didn't believe that a man and a woman would meet and eat together every day just because of friendship. Since the two of them didn't care, the rumors slowly died down. After all, when those people saw that the two protagonists in question did not have any reaction to this, they felt that it was meaningless to spread the news. "Hey, Bei Yi, can I ask you a question?" Yu Qingyue asked softly. Gu Xingyin looked at her in confusion. Yu Qingyue deliberately lowered her voice and seemed a little mysterious. "Have you ever thought about what your future other half would be like?" Her question wasn't strange. To be honest, it would be strange if a girl at this age didn't look forward to love. Chapter 1660. Gu Xingyin looked at her and asked, "Why are you asking this all of a sudden?" Yu Qingyue stuck out her tongue and said, "I heard a few girls in my class talking about you today. They said that their ultimate dream is to find a handsome and smart genius like you." Yu Qingyue sneered in her heart. "I'm sorry, but your ultimate dream is just a dream. Because Bei is my brother's." Every time Yu Qingyue heard the girls in her class talking about Mo Bei, she would feel a sense of superiority. She felt like she was the only one who was sober when everyone was drunk. "You don't know, right? Ha ha ha, the handsome and smart genius in your mouth is actually a girl just like you." Back to the topic. Gu Xingyin shook her head when she heard Yu Qingyue's question. "I haven't thought about it." Yu Qingyue was surprised. "Are you serious? You haven't thought about it at all?" Gu Xingyin was very sure. "No." Before she came, Mo Bei did not have the time to think about these things. By the time Gu Xingyin came to this body, she already knew what her other half looked like, so there was no need for her to think about it. Yu Qingyue was happy and worried when she heard her words. She was happy that her friend did not seem to like anyone. In this case, her brother still had a good chance. She was worried because Mo Bei did not seem to understand the relationship between a man and a woman at all. Her brother still seemed to have a long way to go. Gu Xingyin did not know what Yu Qingyue was thinking. If she knew, she would definitely say, "Girl, you are really thinking too much." Yu Qingyue looked at the lonely girl who lowered her head and ate seriously. She thought for a while and finally could not hold back. She asked tentatively, "Bei, what do you think of my brother?" Gu Xingyin thought to herself, "It's finally here." Yu Qingyue had said so much in the beginning, but her real purpose was to ask this question. She swallowed the food in her mouth and looked at Yu Qingyue. "Your brother? He's very nice." Yu Qingyue looked at her clear glass-like eyes and felt a little helpless. When she did not know that Mo Bei was a girl, she loved her eyes the most. Of course, she still liked it now. However, when faced with this kind of problem, when she mentioned her brother, there was still nothing in her eyes. It was very awkward. If she was interested in Qin Yun, she wouldn't be so natural, right? However, Miss Yu would not be defeated by these setbacks. She probed further. "I'm asking you, do you think a man with my brother's personality is suitable to be a boyfriend?" Gu Xingyin analyzed seriously. "I met brother Yu this morning. He said himself that if he really cares about someone, he will definitely do his best to plan for her and think about everything for her. If he has a girl he likes, that girl should be very happy, right?" Yu Qingyue never thought that her brother would actually say such mushy words. She really didn't expect that her brother, an old virgin who had been abstinent for 10,000 years, could actually say such words of love. Yu Qingyue suddenly felt that she was a little redundant. Judging from her brother's appearance, it was obvious that he had made sufficient preparations. Yu Qingyue looked at Gu Xingyin differently when she thought of how her brother had put in so much effort for the person in front of him. She had never encountered anything that could make her brother put in so much effort. Yu Qingyue felt that calling Mo Bei sister-in-law was something that was set in stone. Chapter 1661. Yu Qingyue stared at Gu Xingyin without blinking. She was a little curious. What did her brother like about Beiyi? Of course, she thought that Beiyi was a very nice person, but after all, her brother and Beiyi had only met a few times. They did not have much time to develop feelings for each other. If it was because of his looks, Yu Qingyue admitted that Mo Bei's looks were indeed the best she had ever seen in her life. Whether it was a man or a woman, she had never seen anyone who could surpass Mo Bei in real life. But Yu Qingyue did not believe that her brother was such a superficial person. In the past, there had been people who claimed to be beautiful and recommended themselves to her brother. What did her brother do in the end? He ordered someone to throw that woman out. Literally, she threw the woman out. The reason was that the woman had touched her brother. It was obvious that her brother was not a person who would go easy on women. Ever since Yu Qingyue could remember, she had never seen her brother act so intimately with any woman. She had once thought that her brother would never find a partner in this lifetime. Who would have thought that he would suddenly say that he liked her best friend? Gu Xingyin felt a little uneasy under Yu Qingyue's gaze. She coughed softly and asked, "What are you looking at?" Yu Qingyue replied instinctively, "I'm looking at why my brother likes you so much." Gu Xingyin was speechless. Yu Qingyue also realized that she had said what was on her mind. She quickly added wittily, "I'm just jealous. My brother treats you better than he treats me. People who don't know better would think that you are his biological brother." After saying this, Yu Qingyue felt that she was indeed very quick-witted. Her ability to react on the spot. It could not be better. Gu Xingyin was speechless for a moment. In the end, she chose not to expose her. However, Yu Qingyue clearly did not know how to restrain herself. When the two of them walked out of the restaurant after dinner, she suddenly looked at Gu Xingyin and said emotionally, "We are so close. My brother treats you so well. Why don't you just marry into my family?" After saying that, she looked at Gu Xingyin mischievously, looking forward to seeing her blush. However, before she could blush, Yu Qingyue was met with a cabotin. That's right, the person who pinned her against the wall was Gu Xingyin. Taking advantage of his height, Gu Xingyin wrapped the girl in his arms. She looked at Yu Qingyue, whose eyelashes were trembling nervously. She smiled and bent down. Their faces were very close to each other. If one were to look at them from a distance, it would look like they were kissing. Yu Qingyue couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Her eyes trembled violently. Although she knew that the person in front of her was a girl like herself, this kind of posture still made her blush and her heart beat faster. What should she do? Gu Xingyin leaned over and whispered in her ear, "I don't think what you said is right. In my opinion, since everyone thinks that we are a couple and I am the man in everyone's eyes, why don't you marry into our Mo family?" Yu Qingyue felt his warm breath on her ear, and her sensitive area suddenly became hot. She felt that it was not difficult for her to breathe. Gritting her teeth, Yu Qingyue tried to calm herself down and pushed the person in front of her away. As if he had expected this, Gu Xingyin stepped back with the force. Before Yu Qingyue could react, she heard the other party's happy laughter. Chapter 1662. Yu Qingyue reacted at once. She pointed angrily at Gu Xingyin, her fingers trembling. "You did it on purpose." Gu Xingyin only laughed to herself. Yu Qingyue felt hurt. Where had the cold, devilish and gentle Mo Bei that she used to know gone? When Gu Xingyin had enough of laughing, she looked at Yu Qingyue, who had a pained expression on her face, and couldn't help but speak. "Qingyue, if that's all you know, you'd better not tease others." Yu Qingyue then realized that Gu Xingyu had taken her probing words as a joke between friends. She felt a little aggrieved, but she couldn't say anything. She couldn't possibly say, "No, actually I wasn't joking just now. My brother really likes you and I also hope that you can be my sister-in-law." If she said something like that, others would think that she was crazy, right? Thus, she could only let this matter pass. However, the two of them didn't expect that although this matter was considered over between them, it would cause a huge uproar in the school. The scene of Gu Xingyin pressing Yu Qingyue down on the bed as a joke was taken by someone with a cell phone. The angle of the photo was very clever. Anyone who saw this photo would think that the two of them were kissing. It wasn't clear whether the person behind this wanted to target Yu Qingyue or Mo Bei. They had actually developed several photos and hung them on the bulletin board in the corridor outside the school gate that every student had to pass to get to school. This matter caused a huge commotion in the school. The form teachers of the two classes immediately got rid of the photos and called the two of them to the office. They also informed their parents. Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue stood in the office and listened to the form teacher of Mo Bei's class, who was over 50 years old, earnestly lecture them about the dangers of puppy love. As the form teacher of Mo Bei's class was more experienced, he was almost fully in charge of this matter. Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue's attitude was surprisingly consistent, which was to listen obediently. This made the form teacher feel much better. When the head teacher finally finished speaking and picked up the cup to drink water, Gu Xingyin said calmly, "Teacher, we all know that puppy love is wrong. But Qingyu and I are really not a couple." The homeroom teacher almost spat out a mouthful of water. She had even said that this student's attitude was not bad, but she did not expect the drama to be like this. The photo was already on display, and the two of them were hugging and kissing. How dare they lie through their teeth? She frowned. Classmate Mo Bei, the best way to solve a problem is to correct your attitude and recognize your mistakes, not blindly running away. Gu Xingyin was still as calm as ever. "I'm telling the truth. Qingyu and I are very good friends. In the photo, the two of us were just joking around. We didn't kiss. That photo was just taken from a clever angle." Yu Qingyue said with a cold face, "Teacher, Bei Yi is right. We weren't in a relationship, and we didn't kiss. I, Yu Qingyue, am not someone who doesn't dare to take responsibility for my actions. If I'm really in love, I'll definitely say it out loud." The teacher hesitated when he heard this. The expressions on these two people's faces were too serious. Could it really be a misunderstanding? Yu Qingyue added, "Bei Yi and I are good friends. My family knows this. Teacher, my brother can testify to this." When she mentioned her brother, the form teacher's eyelids immediately twitched. Chapter 1663. For teachers like them who worked in a private school, the people they met the most were those with power and influence. However, power and influence were clearly divided into different levels. What kind of people could the school be unyielding in front of them? What kind of people could the school be arrogant in front of them? What kind of people could the school be subservient in front of them? Yu Qingyue's brother, the famous young master of the Yu family in Chuannan City, was the latter. Of course, these teachers didn't know what the Yu family really did. They had only heard countless times that they shouldn't provoke the Yu family. Thus, when she heard Yu Qingyue mention her brother, Gu Xingyin's form teacher felt a little guilty. However, she thought about it carefully. She didn't do anything wrong, and she didn't mistreat the student. What was there to be afraid of? Moreover, the parents had already been informed, hadn't they? Yu Qingyue was really angry at this moment. Although she looked sweet and cute, and she had a good personality in front of outsiders, she was still from a family of the underworld. How could Yu Qingyun really raise her sister to be a little white rabbit? Yu Qingyue just hid her fangs very deeply. Moreover, she hadn't encountered anything that could make her reveal her true nature. This time, this matter really offended her. It was fine if they targeted her, but the person behind it should never have released the suspected kissing photos of her and Mo Bei. Now, the whole school knew about it. Yu Qingyue didn't care if her classmates knew or the teachers knew. The scariest thing was that her brother would know too. Yu Qingyue looked very calm when she told Mo Bei's form teacher to ask her brother to come over. In fact, she was very scared. Not only was she scared, but she was also very scared. Thinking about the pair of chopsticks that broke in her brother's hand during dinner, Yu Qingyue felt that her tears were about to fall. If her brother saw those photos, she would definitely be hung up and beaten to death by her brother, not to mention the other things that would happen to her. The form teacher had a class next period, so she asked the two of them to reflect in the office. After the form teacher left, only Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue were left in the office. Yu Qingyue's previous stern and angry look disappeared. She turned her head and looked at Gu Xingyin pitifully, almost grabbing her skirt. Bei Yi, if my brother comes later, you have to save me. Gu Xingyin. What's wrong? Tears of sadness rolled down Yu Qingyue's face. If my brother sees us kissing, he'll beat me to death. Gu Xingyin thought about Yu Qingyuan's expression and was still a little confused. Qingyue, don't worry. When your brother comes, we'll have a good talk with him. That photo is fake. Yu Qingyue thought to herself, even if my brother knows that the photo is fake, our intimacy can't be faked. I reckon I'll still be beaten up by him. Gu Xingyin continued, besides, if a normal brother were to get angry when his sister kissed someone else, he would usually beat up the person who kidnapped his sister. I'm not even worried, so why are you so worried? Yu Qingyue's heart was filled with despair. She really wanted to grab Gu Xingyin's arm and shake it a few times before telling her the cruel truth. In her brother's eyes, it's not his sister kissing someone else, it's his wife being kidnapped. Yu Qingyue's heart ached. The most painful thing was that no one could understand her pain. Chapter 1664. Yu Qingyue had expected that her brother would arrive quickly. When Yu Qingyun arrived at the office, the class teacher was still in session. He pushed the door open and saw Yu Qingyue and Gu Xingyin chatting in the spacious office. The moment she saw her brother, Yu Qingyue stood up straight and revealed a perfect 8-tooth smile. Brother, you're here. Ha ha ha, Yu Qingyun didn't smile. In fact, it wasn't easy for him to maintain a calm expression. No one knew how he felt when he heard Yu Qingyue's class teacher telling him that his sister was in a relationship and receiving those photos. He was angry, disappointed, and irritable. Driving all the way here, it was not easy for him to suppress his fluctuating emotions. Seeing her brother like this, Yu Qingyue shrunk her neck. It looked like he was really angry. Yu Qingyue wanted to cry but no tears came out. She thought to herself, what's going on? I'm really innocent. She thought for a moment and looked at Gu Xingyin. At a time like this, you do it. Gu Xingyin received her gaze and nodded. Yu Qingyun saw the interaction between the two and couldn't help but laugh in anger. Very good. They were still flirting with each other in front of him. He said coldly, shouldn't you guys explain what's going on? Gu Xingyin had been in this world for a long time and this was the first time she saw such obvious anger on Yu Qingyun's face. She stepped forward and said calmly, Brother Yu, this matter can really be explained. Yu Qingyue and I are just good friends, pure friendship. There's something wrong with these photos. Actually, at this time, with Yu Qingyun's brain, how could he not figure out that there might be a problem? He knew his sister well. She said that she didn't like Mo Bei and that they were just friends. That was most likely the truth. If Yu Qingyue really liked someone, she wouldn't hide it. But from this angle, even if it was just a fake, even if it was a clever shot, even if they really didn't kiss, this intimate posture was the truth. Yu Qingyun felt that he had to let Yu Qingyue know that she should keep a distance from Mo Bei. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, he said with an unfathomable tone, Oh? Gu Xingyin didn't know if he believed her, but she had to finish what she had to say. I have a very good relationship with Qingyue. In this photo, we were joking and talking about the cabinet in idol dramas after dinner. I personally demonstrated it. That's all. Of course, Gu Xingyin wouldn't say that it was because Yu Qingyue wanted her to be her sister-in-law. As soon as she finished speaking, Yu Qingyue nodded vigorously. Bei Yi is right. Brother, the two of us are really innocent. Really, more than anything else. Yu Qingyun glanced at her. I didn't ask you to speak. Yu Qingyue burst into tears. My brother doesn't love me anymore. She could only shrink back obediently. When Yu Qingyun heard Gu Xingyin's words, he already half believed her, but he still felt a little uncomfortable. After all, men and women are different. No matter how close the two of you are, you can't joke about such inappropriate things, he said coldly. Gu Xingyin was a little worried. There was really no way to explain this. She couldn't say that she wasn't a man and that she was a woman, right? In that case, it would make sense for her and Yu Qingyue to be so intimate. After all, no matter how close a man and a woman were, this kind of intimacy was indeed a little too much. Chapter 1665. Hence, Gu Xingyin could only nod obediently and admit her mistake, indicating that she would be more careful in the future. Yu Qingyue naturally nodded hurriedly as well. Nonsense. If she didn't express her stand now, she would probably be skinned alive when she got back. At this moment, the office door was opened again. Mo Bei's class teacher and her father walked in. Gu Xingyin immediately went up to Mo Zhongliang when she saw him. Clearly, Mo Zhongliang had heard about the situation from the class teacher. There was no anger in his eyes when he looked at his daughter. Instead, there was some worry. Others might not know, but as her father, how could he not know that Bei was a girl? When Gu Xingyin met her father's gaze, she could only go up to him and say softly, "Qingyue knows my identity." Mo Zhongliang looked at Yu Qingyue in surprise before he nodded. Since this was the case, he knew that it was probably just a small fight between girls. After greeting the two parents, the homeroom teacher briefly explained the situation. In the end, she concluded, puppy love is a very serious matter in our school, so the school would like to invite both parents to come over and deal with this matter together. As soon as she finished speaking, Yu Qingyun spoke up, "Teacher, it's still too early to say that. I've just talked to Qingyue and Bei Yi. This photo is clearly a malicious slander. They're very good friends, not puppy love." The class teacher was speechless. Mo Zhongliang naturally didn't want to fall behind when he heard that the other parents were so supportive. He quickly added, "That's right, teacher. Bei and Qingyue are just good friends. Someone must be secretly targeting them. The school must find out who this malicious person is. Otherwise, who knows if she will harm others." The class teacher was speechless. She had been a class teacher for so many years, but this was the first time she saw a parent who didn't praise or scold their children after seeing a photo of their puppy love. Instead, they righteously said that the photo was fake and that puppy love was fake. They must have made a mistake. How could they continue this conversation? The homeroom teacher really wanted to say that since the photos were already there, the two of them could just have a better attitude and admit their mistakes. The school wouldn't do anything to them. But when she met Yu Qingyun's calm but cold eyes, she found that she couldn't say such words. Yu Qingyun said, "I know that you won't believe our one-sided story, teacher." He stood up and said, "How about this? Give me one day. Tomorrow, I will personally find out who is behind all this. At that time, you can see what the truth is." The homeroom teacher was so shocked by his aura that he was speechless. He could only agree in a daze. Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue also left the office. After staying in the office for so long, today's class was almost over. Gu Xingyin, who had always been willful, followed her father home, thinking that she would only be asked about gossip when she returned to the classroom. Yu Qingyue, who had never liked school, expressed that she loved studying. She still had one more class, and she wanted to attend it seriously. Unfortunately, she was heartlessly rejected by Yu Qingyun and dragged into the car. "Yu Qingyue, QAQ. Someone save me." Yu Qingyun looked at her sister in the front passenger seat and smiled. "Yu Qingyue, don't you think you should explain something to me?" Chapter 1666. Yu Qingyue shuddered. She said weakly, "I've already told you. There's nothing going on between Bei and me." She stared at Yu Qingyun with wide eyes and tried her best to look sincere. "It's true, brother. I don't have any improper thoughts about sister-in-law." "Sister-in-law?" Yu Qingyun muttered the two words softly. Yu Qingyue nodded. "That's right. In my eyes, Bei is my future sister-in-law." For the sake of her life, Yu Qingyue quickly sacrificed her integrity. Yu Qingyun seemed to smile a little. Yu Qingyue patted her chest, thinking that she had finally gone along with her brother's wishes. But the next moment, Yu Qingyun mercilessly pressed down on her. "You know she's your sister-in-law, but you're still so intimate. Don't you know how to avoid suspicion? Don't you know that men and women should keep a distance?" Yu Qingyue was speechless. She had 10,000 reasons to believe that her brother's main point was the first half of his sentence. As for the second half, if it wasn't Bei, her brother would definitely ignore it. Yu Qingyue knew that as long as she said that Mo Bei was actually a girl, she would be fine. After all, she and Mo Bei could be considered best friends. Her brother couldn't be jealous of two girls, right? But Yu Qingyue had to show that she was a person with a conscience. Although her integrity had been fed to the dogs, she still had to be loyal to her friends. Looking at Bei, she knew that she definitely didn't want to tell anyone her secret. How could she reveal it? Hence, Yu Qingyue admitted her mistake with tears in her eyes. After signing more than 10 unfair contracts, her brother was finally satisfied. Yu Qingyue clutched her chest as she lay in the front passenger seat. She felt like she had become a salted fish. She could almost see her clothes, bags, and jewelry fading away in the next 6 months. Yu Qingyun was simply a tyrant. Yu Qingyun looked at his sister and pursed his thin lips. If you want to scold me, say it loudly in front of me. Be careful not to choke. Yu Qingyue was speechless. She wanted to, but she was afraid that if she scolded him, she would have to eat grass for the next 6 months. On the other hand, Gu Xingyin followed Mo Zhongliang home. What's going on with that photo? Mo Zhongliang was a little worried. Gu Xingyin frowned. That girl, Qingyu, is my good friend. She is also the only one who knows my true gender. We were just fooling around. Gu Xingyin said, we didn't kiss and we're definitely not a couple. It's obvious that someone did this on purpose. If he didn't do it on purpose, how could he have taken such a picture that would make one's imagination run wild? The most despicable thing was that it was hung on the school's bulletin board. How much hatred did the person behind him have against him? Hearing this, Mo Zhongliang was also quite angry. Why are all the children nowadays so dark? How could there be so much hatred between you youngsters that you would do such a wicked thing? He looked at Gu Xingyin and said, don't worry, Yan, I won't let you be framed for nothing. Gu Xingyin smiled and said, I believe in Dad. In fact, she was afraid that Mo Zhongliang wouldn't make a move. Yu Qingyun was obviously angry. When it came to investigating in the dark, a proper businessman like Mo Zhongliang would definitely not be able to compare to the Yu family. Sure enough, at night, Gu Xingyin received a call from Yu Qingyun. I've already found out who the girl who framed you and Qingyu is. Don't worry, I'll ask her to apologize in person tomorrow. There's still 6 more tonight. How about giving Qin Fenji a ticket? Shy. Chapter 1667. Although Gu Xingyin knew that Yu Qingyun wouldn't let the person behind this off easily, she was still shocked the next day. A girl stood at the entrance of Chuannan First Middle School with a loudspeaker in her hand. She kept repeating the same words, I am Song Yu from Chuannan First Middle School's 2nd grade class 4. Because I was jealous of my classmates, I took fake photos and put them on the school bulletin board to ruin their reputation. I was wrong, I admit my mistake. Even though this girl named Song Yu didn't say who she was jealous of and framed, many people immediately understood what was going on when they combined it with the photos on the school bulletin board yesterday. Even if there were passers-by who didn't know the situation, a classmate would immediately tell her the truth. So the kissing photos from yesterday were fake? No wonder, why would a normal person publicize such things? Some people could clearly see that Song Yu was holding a megaphone and repeatedly apologizing. Tears kept falling from her eyes. She felt ashamed and embarrassed. She really wanted to throw away the things in her hand and run away. But she didn't dare. At 10:00 last night, she and her parents were about to go to bed when a group of burly men in black suddenly barged into the house. Song Yu even saw that the leader was holding a gun. Meeting the frightened eyes of the whole family, the leader of the burly men only pointed at her coldly. You are Song Yu? You should know what you did during the day, right? Who gave you the guts to frame our eldest miss? Her parents still didn't understand what was going on and only looked at her in confusion. Song Yu originally wanted to pretend that she didn't know anything, but in the end, they directly shot the teacup on the table and broke it. Song Yu was so frightened that she cried out. She was just an ordinary girl from a well-off family. How could she have seen such a scene? The burly man was still threatening. I'll give you a chance now. Tell me what you did and why you did it. Otherwise, my gun is equipped with a silencer. When the time comes, even if I leave a few lives behind, I'm afraid no one will know until tomorrow. Song Yu's parents heard this and looked at their daughter in horror. They didn't understand why their daughter, who had always been obedient, would provoke such a person. Song Yu was scared out of her wits. Sobbing, she said what was in her heart. It turned out that she was also one of the girls who had a crush on Mo Bei. However, Mo Bei basically rejected all the girls that he confessed to. No matter how gentle her methods were, it was still a rejection. But Yu Qingyue was different. Everyone could see that Mo Bei and Yu Qingyue were a couple. Although they had never admitted their relationship, in the eyes of most people, especially those who liked Mo Bei rejected them because of Yu Qingyue. Teenage girls were the easiest to fall into the wrong way of thinking, and it was also the easiest to fall into a dead end. As a result, Song Yu's love turned to hate. Holding on to the thought that if he couldn't have her, then no one else could, he began to hate this pair. Coincidentally, when she passed by the restaurant that day, she saw the two of them fooling around, so she took these photos from afar. Then, after school, when there was no one around, he walked into the surveillance camera's blind spot and posted the photos on the school's bulletin board. Sobbing, Song Yu said, I was thinking that, after something like this happened, the two of them definitely can't be together anymore. Chapter 1668. After the group of men listened in silence, the leader called Yu Qingyun and asked her how to deal with this matter. Then, this morning's incident happened. Song Yu even felt the disdainful gazes gathered on her body. She saw those people who she knew and didn't know pointing at her, and her heart felt so ashamed that she wanted to die. Now, the whole school knew that she, Song Yu, was a shameless and insidious girl who framed others. Her tears had not stopped since she rushed here before the sun had risen. Her father, who had always been strict, after understanding the situation, gave her a tight slap on the spot. All the things I taught you over the years, have you fed them all to the dogs? Song Yu remembered the words her father said in the car before coming to school this morning. Song Yu, no matter how unwilling you are, no matter how shameful you feel, you still have to go. Her father looked tired, obviously he did not have a good rest last night. First, you have indeed done something that let others down. If you make a mistake, you have to apologize, you have to pay the price. This is a matter of course. Her father's expression was cold as he continued, second, we can't afford to offend the Yu family and the Mo family. Especially the Yu family, Song Yu, if you don't want to have any accidents on the way to school tomorrow, you can choose not to go today. Song Yu listened to her father speak the cruel truth. She thought of those expressionless men in black, and the guns in their hands. She never thought that the always smiling and amiable Yu Qingyue in her class actually had such a big background behind her. If she knew earlier, she would never have dared to do such a thing. Song Yu's mind was in a mess, and then, she saw a familiar figure in the crowd. Mo Bei. The other party obviously saw her too. Song Yu immediately lowered her head. She did not dare to face Mo Bei. This was the first time in her life that she had been moved by a boy. He was the embodiment of all her hopes and fantasies about love. If possible, Song Yu hoped that even if everyone saw her hateful and dark side, in this boy's eyes, she was a normal, ordinary girl with a clean mind. At this time, she had completely forgotten what she had done before. If she hadn't been found out, this boy she liked would have suffered a lot of criticism because of her. Gu Xingyin looked at the girl standing in front of the school gate and listened to her mechanically repeating the apology. She suddenly understood what Yu Qingyun meant when she said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this." She had no intention of going forward to say anything. For this kind of thing, adding insult to injury showed that he was not cultured enough. As for magnanimous forgiveness? Gu Xingyin said, "Sorry, I'm not a saint. If I magnanimously forgive those who hurt me, then who will feel sorry for those who seek justice for me? Therefore, she only swept a glance at Song Yu before walking into the classroom without looking sideways. Song Yu didn't raise his head until she was far away. She looked in the direction where the other party had left and could only see a tall and slender figure. Gu Xingyin could neither forgive nor fuss over it, but Yu Qingyue couldn't. Especially when Yu Qingyue thought about how she had lost her pocket money and freedom because of this. She hated Song Yu so much that her teeth itched. Chapter 1669. Yu Qingyue was sent to school by the chauffeur. When she got out of the car at the school gate, she saw Song Yu standing there confessing. Speaking of which, she was the one who came up with this punishment. When her brother understood the situation, he gave her the right to choose. Yu Qingyun thought that Yu Qingyue was the victim in this matter, so she had the right to choose how to repay the person who hurt her. This was Yu Qingyue's answer. What Song Yu wanted was for her and Bai Ye's reputation to be ruined. Then, she would do the exact same thing and even pay them back tenfold. Of course, this was only the most direct form of revenge. In private, Song Yu's parents would definitely lose their decent jobs in Chuannan City. This school would also not allow a student like Song Yu, who had a flawed character, to continue studying. There were many students around who were not in a hurry to go to class and were watching. When they saw Yu Qingyue, many of them were a little excited. Actually, when Gu Xingyin arrived, many of them were very excited and thought that there would be a good show to watch. However, it was obvious that Gu Xingyin did not intend to be a joke. Yu Qingyue was different. She did not care about these things. In fact, as the eldest daughter of the Yu family, there were not many things that she cared about. She walked straight towards Song Yu. When Song Yu saw Yu Qingyue, she could not help but shudder. In the past, she did not know about Yu Qingyue's background, so she did not think much of it. However, yesterday, she heard those burly men with guns respectfully call Yu Qingyue eldest daughter. At this moment, in Song Yu's heart, Yu Qingyue was equivalent to those ferocious burly men. Seeing Song Yu like this, Yu Qingyue was a little disdainful. She walked in front of Song Yu and said in a low voice, "Song Yu, is this how you behave? Where did the courage you had when you exposed the photos of me and Bai Yi yesterday go?" Song Yu started crying again. "I'm really sorry, it's my fault. I shouldn't have been jealous of you, it's really my fault." Song Yu was not stupid. A 17-year-old girl already knew how to think. Although she did not know how big the Yu family was, she only saw the tip of the iceberg. She knew that if Yu Qingyue wanted to kill her, it would be as easy as squashing an ant. Yu Qingyue said impatiently, "Shut up. Don't cry, you're making me upset." Song Yu really didn't want to cry anymore. Yu Qingyue originally wanted to humiliate him, but when she saw Song Yu's frightened appearance, she instantly lost her interest. She looked at her with disgust. "Alright, just do as I said and apologize here. Remember, you must let all the students in the school know what you have done. Morning, noon, after school, as long as someone passes by here, you are not allowed to stop." Song Yu didn't dare to object. Yu Qingyue carried her school bag and left, leaving Song Yu crying and apologizing under all kinds of gazes. This matter lasted for 2 whole days. In the end, the school couldn't stand it anymore, because it was too big of a commotion. It almost alerted the media. The school barely managed to keep the matter under wraps. Then, the vice principal personally came to speak to Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue. What he meant was that it was enough and that they shouldn't make things too ugly. Yu Qingyue's anger had mostly dissipated, so she went with the flow and said that she would follow the school's wishes. It was just that she felt uncomfortable whenever she saw Song Yu. The school immediately said that Chuanan First High School couldn't afford to have such a student. In less than 10 minutes, Song Yu's fate was decided. Chapter 1670. At this time, Song Yu didn't know what she would face in the future. She naively thought that she had already apologized, so this matter could be written off. When her classmates forgot about this matter, she could go back to school and live a normal life like before. It wasn't until she was lectured by the teacher in charge of the teaching office, until her father and mother returned home with gloomy expressions, that Song Yu realized how serious the consequences of her inadvertent evil thoughts were to her family. Some people really couldn't be offended. She had never realized this as clearly as she did now. She cried and apologized to her parents. With the Song family's background, it took a lot of effort to send her to Chuanan First High School. But because of his ignorance, it was all ruined now. Her parents' jobs were ruined, and so was her studies. Her father, who severely punished her after learning of her mistakes, only gently stroked her hair at this time. There are some things that we can't control. It's good that you know you're wrong. No matter what you do in the future, you have to be careful and stay true to your heart. Our family is still here, we can start over again. This was an open-minded man. He knew that in Chuanan City, the Yu family couldn't cover the sky with one hand, but it was a piece of cake for them to pinch a small engineer like him. After discussing with his wife, Song Yu's father quickly sold the house at home, and the family moved to another place within a month. Moved away? Yu Qingyun asked. The buzz-cut man replied in a low voice, yes. Yu Qingyue praised, this man is a smart man. He nodded, since they're so sensible, don't bother about it anymore. There's no deep hatred, there's no need to be so ruthless. The buzz-cut man's expression became serious, yes, young master. Song Yu's matter was resolved, and the news that Mo Bei and Yu Qingyue were just good friends began to spread in the school. Speaking of which, this person was strange. In the past, Gu Xingyin had explained this matter several times, but no one believed her. But now, after the photo incident, Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue were still as close as ever. But everyone began to believe that there was nothing but pure friendship between the two of them. Gu Xingyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But for Yu Qingyue, there was another layer of worry. Recently, more and more girls came to her to send love letters to Mo Bei. This was because everyone knew that she was close to Mo Bei and that they were not a couple. But Yu Qingyue didn't dare to take it. If her brother found out that she had helped those girls pass love letters to Bei Yi, Yu Qingyue's heart ached as she clutched her wallet. She was afraid that her last bit of pocket money would be confiscated. In order to prevent a tragedy from happening, Yu Qingyue took the initiative to confess to Yu Qingyun when she returned home. Brother, if you don't do it, I won't be able to hold on. Yu Qingyun turned around and looked at her, waiting for her to continue. Yu Qingyue said, now all the girls in school know that Bei Yi and I are good friends. He's single. With Bei's looks and family background, you know what kind of situation he will encounter. Chapter 1671. This time, Yu Qingyue resisted her brother's cold aura. She said, I really think that Bei Yue is a good guy. He's good-looking too. People like him are very likable. Back when I was his rumored girlfriend, I could help you block some people. But now, I'm in no position to stop those girls from chasing after my prince. Yu Qingyun was silent for a moment before he said, I understand. Yu Qingyue sighed in relief. She then carefully probed her brother. Brother, I heard that Givenchy has released a new, Yu Qingyun said calmly, find your own butler and I'll give you half of your allowance. Yu Qingyue jumped in joy, thank you, brother. You're the best. I love you so much. Yu Qingyue happily returned to her room. She had finally found her goal, to help her brother get together with Bei Yue. If that was the case, it was as if she could see the day her pocket money returned to her own pocket. On the other hand, Yu Qingyun sat alone in his study for a while. Finally, he couldn't help but call Gu Xingyin. Brother Yu? A puzzled voice came from the other end of the line. Yu Qingyun casually said a few words of concern before he cut to the chase. Are you free tomorrow? He then added, after school. Gu Xingyin obviously had time. In fact, as a student, she basically had nothing to do after school. You mean homework? Top student Gu Xingyin said that it was something that could be done in school. And so, the two of them agreed to meet. The next day, Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue talked about it during dinner. Yu Qingyue sighed, my brother is really fast. Gu Xingyin didn't hear her clearly, what did you say? Yu Qingyue coughed dryly and said, I said my brother is really fast. Yesterday, he said that he wanted to treat you to a meal because of what happened last time. Who knew that he would tell you so soon? Gu Xingyin didn't expose her lame excuse. At this moment, the system said, according to my experience, Yu Qingyue is lying. There's a 90% chance that Yu Qingyun wants to hit on you. Gu Xingyin, pfft. She was drinking soup. Fortunately, she turned her head in time and did not spit it on Yu Qingyue's face. Yu Qingyue asked in surprise, "Bei, what happened to you?" Gu Xingyin waved her hand and took out a tissue to wipe her mouth. "I'm fine. I just suddenly choked." Gu Xingyin asked the system, "Where did you learn all this from?" The system replied, "I've been browsing the South Sichuan First High School's forum recently, and I found the human language to be very interesting. I've already mastered all the words in this world, but even after changing them, I still can't understand what they mean." Gu Xingyin held back her laughter. "A system like you will never be able to fully comprehend the wisdom of the people of Hua Nation." The system agreed, "Yes, that's why I think I still need to study harder." Gu Xingyin felt that the system was becoming more and more adorable. She still remembered the system's cold and formulaic tone in the beginning. It was not as lively as it was now. The more missions she completed, the stronger Gu Xingyin's perception of the world. She also started to suspect that the system was slowly gaining its own consciousness as she grew stronger. Or was it originally a living creature? Chapter 1672. The next day, Gu Xingyin informed her family early that she would not be coming back for dinner since she had a date with her friends. Mo Zhongliang had always been a carefree attitude towards his daughter's education. He made sure that his daughter did not fall behind in her studies. The rest of her free time was up to her. After school, Gu Xingyin saw Yu Qingyun's car waiting at the side. "It's just the two of us today." Gu Xingyin looked around. Most of the time, the chauffeur drove. Yu Qingyun revealed a faint smile. "It's just the two of us." Gu Xingyin did not think there was a problem. She shrugged and sat in the front passenger seat. She asked, "I heard Qingyue say that big brother Yu wants to treat me to dinner because of what happened last time?" Yu Qingyun was stunned. He knew that his sister might have found an excuse for him. He nodded slightly. "Yes and no." Gu Xingyin laughed. "Why are you keeping me in suspense?" Gu Xingyin was not unfamiliar with their destination this time. It was the tea house where they first met. It was still the third floor. Yu Qingyun looked at Gu Xingyin's eyes and explained, "This tea house is under my name. The third floor is private property. We don't receive guests." "No wonder." Gu Xingyin nodded to show that she understood. It was still the same refreshing tea fragrance. Even the position of the tables and chairs had not changed. Yu Qingyun said, "Bei, make me another pot of tea." Gu Xingyin teased, "I heard that you wanted to treat me to dinner. Why did it become me making tea for you?" "This is a loss." Yu Qingyun smiled. "Don't worry. You won't miss out on a meal. But before we eat, I want to talk to you." The water on the stove was not boiling yet. Gu Xingyin was not in a hurry. Instead, she wanted to know what he wanted to talk to her about. She sat on the chair, her clear eyes filled with confusion. Yu Qingyun had negotiated with all kinds of people in the past. Every time, he seemed to have a card up his sleeve. But this time, he didn't expect the result. He opened his mouth and said, "I heard from Qingyu that you have many suitors in school. I wonder what your thoughts are." Beating around the bush was never the style of the Yu family's young master. If he wanted to know something, he would ask directly. Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment. She did not expect him to ask this question. Her face was a little red, which was the reaction of a normal teenager. I actually don't have any thoughts." Yu Qingyun was very satisfied with this answer. If he didn't have any thoughts, it meant that he wasn't tempted by anyone. He asked again, "I heard that there were even boys in school who confessed to you?" Gu Xingyin's face stiffened when she heard this. Yu Qingyun was just casually testing Mo Bei's attitude towards this, but looking at her reaction, there was actually a guy who confessed to her? Yu Qingyun felt her hands itch. Gu Xingyin coughed lightly and said, There there is one. Yu Qingyun asked calmly, then do you feel disgusted? Gu Shengyin shook her head. From Mo Bei's point of view, she was a girl. Why would she feel disgusted when she heard a confession from the opposite sex? From her point of view, she didn't feel anything at all. She didn't even care about race. Why would she care about gender? She shook her head. If I like someone or reject someone, the reason will definitely not be related to gender or nationality. After she finished speaking, she saw a smile on Yu Qingyun's face. Chapter 1673. Yu Qingyun nodded with a look of deep agreement. I also think that true feelings can't be judged by gender. Gu Shengyin laughed in her heart, but on the surface, she said seriously, yes, I think so too. The next moment, she heard Yu Qingyun say, Bei, if, at this point, he suddenly stopped. Gu Shengyin tilted her head, what? Yu Qingyun didn't continue. Instead, he said, the water's boiling. Gu Shengyin looked at him, don't change the topic. Tell me what you wanted to say. Yu Qingyue chuckled, I'll tell you later. Gu Shengyin. Okay. She got up and started making tea. The two of them sat there quietly, looking at the scenery outside the floor-to-ceiling window as they chatted about everything. After about an hour, Yu Qingyun said, it's about time. Let's go eat. Gu Shengyin wondered what this guy was trying to do. The car stopped in front of a very famous restaurant in the city. Gu Shengyin looked at the name of the restaurant and felt a little conflicted. Seeing her like this, Yu Qingyun asked, what's wrong? Gu Shengyin said, I don't think this place is suitable for the two of us to come. Yu Qingyun raised his eyebrows, what's wrong? Gu Shengyin didn't believe that he didn't know anything. She pointed at the sign and said, this is a couple restaurant. Oh, Yu Qingyun dragged out his voice and said casually, we're just going to try the food. The food here is really good. Qingyue and I have been here a few times. Gu Shengyin thought to herself, do you think I'll believe you just because you said that? How is that possible? Do you think I'll compromise just because you said that? I will. Gu Shengyin helplessly followed Yu Qingyun into the restaurant. She wasn't really helpless. She just made a bet with the system. System, do you think he'll confess to me? The system said, yes. Gu Shengyin, what a coincidence, that's what I was thinking too. If that's the case, how can the two of us continue gambling? This restaurant was worthy of being called a couple's restaurant. The space of each table was quite private, almost equivalent to a small private room. Gu Shengyin also saw brightly colored roses with dew on the table. It was Gu Shengyin's first time here. The dishes here were just as Yu Qingyun said. They were indeed very delicious. The two of them didn't talk much during the meal. When Gu Shengyin put down the cutlery in her hand, Yu Qingyun also stopped. He looked at Gu Shengyin and said, you asked me before, what was the unfinished sentence? Gu Shengyin looked up at him. Yu Qingyun's voice was low, but it reached Gu Shengyin's ears very clearly. I'm not satisfied with being your friend, Bei. Are you willing to accept me as your lover and stay by your side? Gu Shengyin's expression froze for a moment. Yu Qingyun looked at her carefully. He didn't know if she could accept him. Under Yu Qingyun's gaze, Gu Shengyin, who was sitting opposite him, actually smiled slowly. Gu Shengyin said softly, I've been thinking, how long will you hold back your words? Yu Qingyun's face revealed a clearly startled expression. He looked at Gu Shengyin and said, you know that I like you? Chapter 1674. Gu Shengyin nodded without hesitation. For a moment, Yu Qingyun felt like she was gnashing her teeth in anger. So she knew everything. If she knew, why didn't she show any signs of knowing from the beginning? To think that he had been so careful, afraid that she would know his thoughts and scare her. Yu Qingyun couldn't help but say, since you already knew, why didn't you? He stopped talking. Gu Shengyin finished his sentence, why didn't I? Do you want to ask me why I always acted like I didn't understand anything even though I knew about it? Why didn't I react to your hints? Yu Qingyun didn't say anything, but his expression told Gu Shengyin that his guess was the truth. Gu Xingyin chuckled. I'm just guessing about that. Besides, I can't be sure if I'm thinking too much. If I misunderstood something, wouldn't it be awkward for both of us? Besides, this kind of thing should be on your side. Yu Qingyun was a little depressed at first, but when he heard Gu Xingyin's rational analysis, he suddenly realized something. From the beginning to the end, he didn't show any signs of rejection. What did this mean? He suddenly reached out and held Gu Xingyin's hands on the table, successfully interrupting Gu Xingyin's words. Bei, you know my feelings, and you don't dislike it, right? Yu Qingyun looked into his eyes and asked. Gu Xingyin nodded. Yu Qingyun smiled, his eyes bright. Then are you willing to accept me? Gu Xingyin shook his head. Yu Qingyue's eyes darkened, but he didn't give up. Instead, he said, can you tell me the reason why you rejected me? Gu Xingyin was very clear. I like you a lot, Yu Qingyun. This was the first time Gu Xingyin called him by his name. I can accept your pursuit, but are you sure that the me you know is the real me? Gu Xingyin asked. I even know that the Yu Qingyun standing in front of me is not the real young master of the Yu family who commands the black and white world of Chuanan City. Yu Qingyun's expression changed upon hearing this. He really did not expect that Mo Bei, who had always behaved like an ordinary rich young master in front of him, would know so much. Furthermore, after knowing his identity, Mo Bei still had the guts to say such things. The Mo Bei in your eyes is the young master of the Mo family who is knowledgeable and naive. And the Yu Qingyun I've always seen in my eyes is a gentle gentleman, a knowledgeable and successful man. Are you sure that under such circumstances, two people who are attracted to each other will be able to be together without any misunderstandings? Gu Xingyin finished his words and finally voiced out his thoughts. Are you sure that under such circumstances, two people who are attracted to each other can be together without any misunderstandings? Yu Qingyun fell into silence. He really did not think that Mo Bei would actually say such words. Indeed, in front of Mo Bei, he restrained all of his sharpness, and only showed his gentle and knowledgeable side. Of course, this was not an act. In front of Mo Bei, he could not help but want to show his best side. But if the two of them were really together, he could not hide his identity and his other personality forever. Chapter 1675. For the first time, Yu Qingyun faced this problem seriously after Gu Xingyin pointed it out. He was lost in thought. Gu Xingyin was not in a hurry. She picked up a glass of juice and sipped it slowly. Well, the juice in this restaurant was quite delicious. After a while, when Gu Xingyin almost asked the waiter to refill their glass, Yu Qingyun finally raised his head. The last bit of hesitation in his eyes disappeared. Bei, I've thought a lot. Yu Qingyun looked at Gu Xingyin steadily. I've thought a lot just now, but in the end, I think I should follow my heart. Yu Qingyun reached out his hand and gently pressed on his heart. This place clearly tells me that it's beating for you. Yu Qingyun watched as Gu Xingyin put down the cup in his hand and looked at her. She smiled and said, what you said just now makes sense, but I also believe in my own intuition. No matter what you are like, or what I am like, my heart and feelings for you will never change. This place will always beat for you, and I will always love you deeply. This is something that will never change. Yu Qingyun looked at the person in front of him who had moved his heart for the first and only time, and said the words of love that he thought he would never say in his life. No matter what unexpected things will happen between us, I believe that the final result will not change. I will be with you, always. Gu Xingyin was moved. For the unhesitant persistence in his eyes, and for the great confidence that burst out when he spoke. She compromised. Gu Xingyin lowered his eyes and sighed softly. You are really a man who easily fascinates people. Yu Qingyue replied in the same soft voice, but my mesmerizing appearance will only appear in front of you. They looked at each other and smiled. Yu Qingyue suddenly said, so, at this point, my confession is a success, right? When he said this, he was full of confidence. But Gu Xingyin shook her head. Yu Qingyun's expression changed. Is there any other problem? Gu Xingyin said, I have a big secret. Yu Qingyun was startled. Gu Xingyin asked, "Can you answer me directly? Yu Qingyun, do you like men or women?" Yu Qingyun was stunned when he heard this. He immediately thought, did the other party reject being together with a man? He said, "I won't go against my heart and tell you that I'm gay, bae." His expression was very serious. "In fact, before I met you, I've never experienced the feeling of being moved, but I've also never felt any impulses towards anyone of the same sex. I don't think I'm gay." He suddenly smiled mischievously. This man always had the charm of a mature gentleman. Occasionally, when he blinked and smiled, it gave people a feeling of being electrified. To borrow a phrase from the internet, I'm not gay. I just happen to like someone of the same gender as me. Gu Xingyin finished the last sip of juice in the glass. She said, "It's a pity that you don't actually like someone of the same gender as you." Yu Qingyun spent dozens of seconds before she finally reacted to this sentence in her mind. Chapter 1676. You. He looked at Gu Xingyin hesitantly, as if he was trying to figure out if he had understood him correctly. Gu Xingyin nodded, "It's what you understood." She spread out her hands, "Otherwise, how do you think I became good friends with Qin Yu after rejecting her?" Yu Qingyun only felt that this matter had subverted his understanding. What kind of situation is this? No matter how strong his heart was, after experiencing the fact that he had finally accepted the fact that he had fallen in love with a man, but found that the man he liked was actually a woman in disguise, Yu Qingyun's mind was still a little confused. Gu Xingyin tilted her head and admired the man's somewhat blank eyes. This man had always looked like he had a card up his sleeve, and such an expression was rare. She thought for a moment and said, "This matter involves some private matters of our family, and it's not a good memory, so I don't want to talk about it." She thought of her mother, Su Lihua, who had disappeared long ago, and a trace of disgust flashed in her eyes. "I will regain my original identity when I'm 18 years old and become an adult." She looked at Yu Qingyun, "I know that you have the ability to find out what happened to me, but I beg you not to investigate. This matter is not a good thing for me, and I don't want anyone except my family to know about it." Gu Xingyin was right. When Yu Qingyun heard this, the first thing that came to her mind was to investigate what had happened to Mo Bei. Then he heard Gu Xingyin's words. Even if he was curious, Yu Qingyun was still willing to respect Gu Xingyin's thoughts. "Okay, I won't investigate this matter." Only then did Gu Xingyin smile. "You seem very happy," she asked Yu Qingyun. Yu Qingyun did not hide the smile on his face. "I am indeed very happy." "Why?" Gu Xingyin asked. Yu Qingyun replied, "Although I don't care about your gender, if you are a girl, I can have you more justifiably." He looked at Gu Xingyin with undisguised joy in his eyes. "I can crown you with the title of Mrs. Yu in the future. I can openly hold your hand in any occasion. I can have a legally recognized relationship with you as husband and wife in this country." If Bei Yi was a man, no matter how good he was to him, there would inevitably be some people who would slander him in the dark if he revealed their relationship in front of everyone. He could control those people's mouths, but he could not control their minds. This country was not tolerant to the point that gay and heterosexual couples were treated the same. Gu Xingyin pursed his lips. "I didn't promise you anything. Aren't you being too idealistic?" Yu Qingyun saw the complaint and disdain on her face, and instantly understood what she meant. "Then, let me ask you one more time. Miss Mo Bei, are you willing to let me, Yu Qingyun, stay by your side as your lover from now on?" He solemnly asked this question again. Gu Xingyin corrected him, "I am Gu Xingyin, yen as in sweet smile." Yu Qingyun's eyes moved. He patiently repeated the question from before, and extended his hand towards Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin smiled. She did not reply, but placed her hand in the other's open palm. Chapter 1677. A year later. At the Mo residence. The Mo residence was brightly lit tonight. Mo Zhongliang's face was full of smiles. Old Madame Mo and Old Master Mo had both returned. Although their hair was white, their faces were rosy and they were obviously in good spirits. Outside the Mo family's villa, luxury cars continuously stopped. Men and women in bright clothes walked in one by one with smiles on their faces. Mo Zhongliang personally welcomed the guests at the entrance. When the guests saw the Mo family's lineup and Mo Zhongliang's attitude, they all felt that they had made the right decision to come. Looking at the host's appearance, it was obvious that Chairman Mo valued his eldest son very much. That's right. In the eyes of outsiders, today was the birthday banquet of the eldest son of the Mo Corporation, Mo Bei. The eldest son of the Mo family had always kept a low profile. Outsiders rarely saw him. Usually, many families would bring their children out to see the world when they were about the same age, and at the same time, develop their own social circle. The eldest son of the Mo family was already 18 years old. The Mo family's actions were considered late. Some of the guests even secretly guessed that the Mo family was finally preparing to officially announce the heir with such a big move. 9 p.m. The guests who were supposed to come were basically all here. Mo Zhongliang also walked into the villa. At this moment, the main character of the banquet, Mo Bei, had yet to come out. The guests were actually a little puzzled. This was not a mysterious event. It did not make sense that the main character would not come out at this time. Mo Zhongliang spoke at this moment. He put away the smile on his face, and his expression became very serious. Thank you for coming to my son's birthday banquet today. I know that everyone thinks that today is my eldest son's coming-of-age ceremony, but I'm here to apologize to everyone. Actually, this is not the case. The moment he said this, there was a flurry of discussion in the luxuriously decorated hall. What did the Mo family mean by this? Was this not the heir's birthday banquet? Some of the people who like to speculate started to come up with conspiracy theories after hearing Mo Zhongliang's words. Mo Zhongliang had divorced his wife more than a year ago, and now he was saying such things. Could it be that he had an illegitimate child outside and was using his eldest son's birthday banquet as an excuse to clear his name? Mo Zhongliang had already expected such a situation. The place he was at today was specially prepared. When he spoke here, his voice could be clearly heard in every corner of the hall. Everyone, listen to my story. With a heavy expression, Mo Zhongliang told the story that he had discussed with his family. The gist of it was that not long after the twins were born, they suffered from various ailments. Later on, the elder son, Mo Bei, did not make it, and the younger daughter, Mo Beiyan, was on the verge of death. Just as he was about to give up, someone introduced a master to him. That master had said that this girl's fate was too hard. She wouldn't be able to grow up like this unless she was raised as a boy so that those who weren't close to her wouldn't know. Once she reached the age of 18, her fate would naturally change. Mo Zhongliang spoke with such sincerity that even he almost believed it to be true. Finally, he said, so all these years, people outside have thought that I have an eldest son named Mo Bei. Actually, that's not the case. Today's birthday banquet is for my 18-year-old daughter, Mo Beiyan. He suddenly raised his voice and said to the spiral staircase, Beiyan, come down. The guests who hadn't recovered from the news just now subconsciously followed Mo Zhongliang's words and looked in the direction of the stairs. Chapter 1678. Before they saw Gu Xingyin, some people made malicious guesses. They said that a girl who could pretend to be a man for 18 years without being discovered probably didn't look very good. However, their thoughts didn't last long before they were slapped in the face by reality. The girl who walked down the stairs was wearing a snow-white off-the-shoulder gown. There was a silk knot on her left arm, and the silk ribbon hung down, showing a bit of elegance in her playfulness. She was wearing a pair of legendary crystal shoes. Mo Zhongliang had spent a lot of money to hire a foreign master to make these crystal shoes for his daughter. He wanted to tell his daughter that she was the real princess of the Mo family. Even the most ignorant people could see that Gu Xingyin's outfit today was expensive. It almost overshadowed all the other outfits in the room. But even so, most people's eyes only stayed on the clothes for a moment, and then stopped on the face of the owner of the clothes. So beautiful. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim when they saw Gu Xingyin for the first time. This girl's eyes were like horizontal waves, full of autumn water. Her skin was like cream, delicate and flawless. Her nose was high, and her red lips were slightly parted. She clearly had an extremely beautiful appearance, but when she smiled, she had the naivety of a little deer that did not know about the world. At this time, she was standing under the crystal chandelier above her head, like a princess who had walked out of a fairy tale. The men couldn't help but linger on her body, while the girls secretly compared themselves to her in many ways. In the end, the result could only make them grit their teeth secretly. Mo Zhongliang was also looking at his daughter quietly. There was an unconcealable pride in his eyes. Look, this dazzling and beautiful girl was his daughter. He was very glad that he knew the truth back then. Otherwise, he didn't know if he would be able to see his daughter like this. Gu Xingyin walked down slowly, and then put her hand on Mo Zhongliang's arm. In the center of the hall, there was a huge multi-layer cake. At the top of the cake, there was a number 18 carved out of crystal, standing quietly in the center. Around the number 18, there was a circle of burning candles. There were exactly 18 of them. When Gu Xingyin walked in front of the cake, everyone gave her a kind smile. The lights in the hall suddenly dimmed, leaving only the 18 small candles burning quietly in front of Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin smiled, then closed her eyes, made a birthday wish, and blew out the candles in one breath. When the lights in the hall lit up again, the guests there was a commotion. Gu Xingyin, as if she felt something, she raised her head and looked in the direction of the door. A man with a clear temperament was walking over from the door. Beside him was a sweet young lady wearing a green tube-top dress. Who else could it be but Yu Qingyue? Many guests were aghast. The Mo clan is actually related to the Yu clan? Otherwise, why would the young master of the Yu personally for the birthday of the Mo family's daughter? Different from the other guests' reactions, Mo Zhongliang's face turned ugly the moment he saw Yu Qingyue. Any father wouldn't have any good impression of a man who was thinking about his daughter before she was even an adult. Chapter 1679. How did Mo Zhongliang know? Yu Qingyun wasn't someone who could endure. The second week after he established his relationship with Gu Xingyin, he personally went to the Mo family with a gift. Mo Zhongliang was initially fearful of the arrival of the Mo family's young master, but after knowing his intentions, Mo Zhongliang almost took the cleaning tools in the house and chased him out. This old man actually dared to think about his Mo Zhongliang had completely forgotten this man's identity. He only knew that this old man actually wanted his daughter. That's right, in Mo Zhongliang's eyes, Yu Qingyun, who was already 28 years old, was an old man. The first conversation was obviously not very pleasant. But Yu Qingyun was a man who would not give up until he reached his goal, and Gu Xingyin's attitude was very obvious. She liked this man. Mo Zhongliang fiercely objected at the beginning, then ignored it, and finally seemed to have given up on objecting. Anyway, even if he objected, these two young people would probably not listen to his opinion. Not to mention Yu Qingyun, Mo Zhongliang at least understood his daughter. She was a very opinionated girl. If his daughter decided on something, no matter how much he objected, he would not be able to change her mind. Forget it, the children and grandchildren will have their own fortune, right? But even if he had already somewhat compromised, when he saw Yu Qingyun in this kind of situation, Mo Zhongliang's heart still lit up. This brat, what is he trying to do? That's right, in Mo Zhongliang's eyes, Yu Qingyun was no longer the Yu family's young master, but a brat who wanted his precious daughter, an old hooligan. But no matter how ugly Mo Zhongliang's expression was, Yu Qingyun could not see it. At this moment, all of his eyes, all of his mind, was attracted by the girl who seemed to have her own light. This was the first time he saw Gu Xingyin dressed as a girl. After knowing that Bai Yan was a girl, Yu Qingyun had also thought about how the person he liked would look like in a girl's dress. He knew that with Bai Yan's foundation, she would look good no matter what. But no matter how much he imagined, it could not compare to this glimpse. Yu Qingyun felt that his heart was beating very fast, like those teenage boys who were moved for the first time. Yu Qingyue felt her brother's tense body and smiled to herself. Probably no one knew how agitated the prim and proper young master of the Yu family was right now, right? But Bai Yi is really beautiful. Yu Qingyue looked at Gu Xingyin enviously. It's fine if she looks so good in men's clothing, but she's also so stunning in women's clothing. She's simply driving people of the same sex to death. The brother and sister had their own thoughts when they arrived in front of Gu Shengyin. Yu Qingyun's eyes were locked on Gu Shengyin. Her voice was a little hoarse. I'm here to celebrate your birthday. He personally took out an exquisite gift box from behind him and handed it to Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin smiled and thanked him. Then, she opened it in front of all the guests. It was a custom in southern Sichuan that if it was a gift from someone close to the host could open it on the spot to show the guest to show their closeness. Many people saw this scene and saw that the young master of the Yu family's expression did not change at all. They started to think that the Mo family and the Yu family's relationship was better than they had imagined. When Gu Shengyin opened the gift box in her hand, many women gasped softly. Today's 7th chapter is even better. There will be more chapters at night, but the 10th chapter will not be out before midnight. Gao Lingji will finish it after midnight. The recommendation tickets will expire if you don't vote every day. If you still have tickets, please vote for Gao Lingji. Chapter 1680. It was a very beautiful necklace. A diamond necklace. The women who were able to attend this birthday banquet naturally wouldn't lack a diamond necklace. But this one was different. It was as if every angle of her was quietly shining with a light that belonged to her. It was a kind of beauty that could shock the entire time. These women's eyes were very sharp. They were familiar with the new designs of any luxury brand in the world. However, no one could tell which brand the necklace belonged to. The Yu family's young master couldn't have brought out some unknown goods. Then there was only one answer: this was specially made for the eldest daughter of the Mo family. The difference between spending a lot of money to buy an expensive necklace and spending the effort to get a custom-made necklace was too big. Especially for someone like the Yu family's young master who didn't lack money, the latter's intentions were the most precious. In an instant, countless envious and jealous gazes shot towards Gu Shengyin from every corner of the hall. Gu Shengyin curled her lips into a faint smile. She gently closed the box and smiled at Yu Qingyun. It's a very beautiful necklace. I like it very much. Yu Qingyun looked at her slender and elegant neck that was as white as a swan's. In her mind, she was already imagining how beautiful that necklace would be if she wore it. Mo Zhongliang saw that the atmosphere was a little off and hurriedly walked over. I didn't expect young Master Yu and Miss Yu to also attend my daughter's birthday banquet. He just wanted to interrupt the conversation between the two. Yu Qingyun understood what he meant, but didn't intend to do as he said. He bowed towards Mo Zhongliang. Uncle Yu is too serious. How can Qingyun not come to Bayan's birthday banquet? Everyone looked at Yu Qingyun and Gu Shengyin with strange gazes. It was her uncle and Bai Yan. Some people even had a hint of understanding in their eyes. Mo Zhongliang secretly gritted his teeth. This kid must be doing it on purpose. Yu Qingyun was already immune to the threat in his future father-in-law's eyes. He came today because he had something important to do. Yu Qingyun turned around and looked at Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin looked into his eyes and suddenly understood what he wanted to do. She secretly held her forehead in her heart. This time, I'm afraid Dad is going to jump up and down. Sure enough, very quickly, Yu Qingyun used a voice that all the guests present could hear to say, today, other than celebrating Bayan's birthday, Yu Qingyun is here for an even more important matter. Mo Zhongliang had a bad feeling. Then, he saw Yu Qingyun take out something from her pocket. Exquisite box, this size. Yu Qingyun gently opened it, then let go of her sister's hand and knelt down on one knee in front of Gu Shengyin. Bai Yan, marry me. Everyone was in an uproar. No one had expected that the Yu family's crown prince would do such a thing at the Mo family's daughter's birthday banquet. Of course, what was even more unexpected was that Yu Qingyun would actually have someone kneel down and propose. This was the young master of the Yu family who could shake the entire Chuannan city with a stomp of his feet. Mo Zhongliang clearly did not expect that Yu Qingyun would actually be able to do this for her daughter. He opened his mouth, but the words that he was about to say were suddenly unable to come out. Many women covered their mouths to hide their screams. This was simply too romantic. Which woman had not thought of such a thing? Her Prince Charming kneeling in front of her and proposing in front of everyone? Gu Shengyin looked down at the man in front of her. Chapter 1681. He didn't seem to think that it was beneath him to do such a thing. Yu Qingyun didn't think so. In fact, in his eyes, he only cared about what Gu Shengyin thought. He didn't care what other people thought. Yu Qingyue didn't expect her brother to do this. After all, Yu Qingyun didn't say anything. She thought that they were here to congratulate Gu Shengyin on her birthday. But then again, it made sense. With her brother's perverted possessiveness, how could he bear to wait until Bai Yi was an adult and regained her identity as a girl? Even if he couldn't take her, he would at least mark her as his own so that no one could covet her. It had to be said that Yu Qingyue knew her brother well. Everyone, including Yu Qingyun and Yu Qingyue, was waiting to see how Gu Shengyin would react. Mo Zhongliang and Gu Shengyin's grandparents didn't say anything. Over the past year, they had all heard about Gu Shengyin and Yu Qingyun. They had objected to it before, but now they could only say that their children and grandchildren would have their own blessings. As an adult, Bai Yan had the right to make decisions for her own future. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Gu Shengyin finally moved. She slowly reached out her hand and gently placed it on top of Yu Qingyun's raised hand. Okay. Yu Qingyun was overjoyed. Almost immediately, he put the ring on Gu Shengyin's finger. Then, he got up and hugged Gu Shengyin tightly in his arms. This was what he wanted to do from the moment he entered the room. The people around them applauded as if to congratulate the young couple. After a long while, Mo Zhongliang had no choice but to step forward. He cleared his throat and interrupted the couple's embrace. Mo Zhongliang felt very helpless in his heart. Today was clearly his daughter's birthday party, not their engagement party. Why did he feel that there was something wrong with the primary and secondary arrangement? But no matter what Mo Zhongliang thought, he had achieved the goal of this birthday party. After that night, the entire business world of Chuannan City knew that the mysterious eldest young master of the Mo group was not the eldest young master but the eldest young mistress. The most amazing thing was that on the night that the young mistress regained her identity as a daughter, she received a marriage proposal from the crown prince of the Yu family. People paid more attention to the latter than the former. After all, the Yu clan was much more powerful than the Mo clan and had conflicts of interest with many other clans. Yu Qingyun was also very satisfied with this. Because from now on, he could openly hug her, kiss her, and be jealous when other men tried to get close to her. No one else was more qualified than him as her fiancé, wasn't it? Gu Shengyin's birthday party was held during the summer vacation. A month later, she entered a new school to study. The seniors of University S expressed their heartache. This was because the quality of this batch of juniors was very high, especially in the finance department. It was said that there was a new junior whose looks could kill the female celebrities in the entertainment industry. That junior had only been at University S for a short period of a month, but she had successfully defeated all the seniors and competitors in the same batch and successfully ascended to the throne of the campus belle. However, before the seniors could put on a handsome pose and prepare to have a romantic encounter with the junior, a thunderous piece of news came out of the blue. This new campus belle already had a boyfriend. No, to be precise, she had a fiancé. Chapter 1682. Gu Shengyin helplessly looked at Yu Qingyun, who was holding her hand. In just a month, the entire school knew that she had a fiancé. Everyone who knew her name Gu Shengyin knew that she had a fiancé. If one were to say that Yu Qingyun had no part in this, she would not believe a single word. Noticing Gu Shengyin's gaze, Yu Qingyun smiled. He knew what she was thinking. You're not happy? Gu Shengyin shook her head. She wasn't unhappy. After all, after Yu Qingyun did this, her side became much quieter. But, you don't have to be like this. She helplessly looked at him. Yu Qingyun turned around and hugged her. He put his chin on her head and gently sniffed the refreshing fragrance of her hair. At this time, the two of them were by a small flower bed in the school. The environment here was quiet. Although there weren't many people, there would still be people passing by occasionally. But in the university, it wasn't rare for young couples to hug, so the students would at most take a quick glance and sigh at the appearance of the two protagonists. Yu Qingyue softly sighed in her ear. I know, but I just can't wait to let everyone know that you're mine. In that case, those brats wouldn't keep having ideas about his people. She didn't know how angry he was when he first came to this school to look for her and saw those youthful boys looking at her with infatuated and passionate gazes. And fear. He was angry because someone else coveted what belonged to him. And fear because he felt the gap between the two of them. For example, age. He was about to enter his 30s. She was indeed young. In the school, she would constantly meet outstanding boys of the same age. The young master of the Yu family, who had always had a card up his sleeve, had a rare look of worry. It wasn't that he wasn't confident in the relationship between the two of them, but that he wasn't confident in himself. Yu Qingyun shook his head and bitterly smiled. He never knew that one day, he would use the word lack of confidence on himself. He cared too much, so he worried about gains and losses. Suddenly, he felt a warmth in his palm. It was Gu Xingyin's hand that was holding his. Then, the other party's fingers twirled and interlocked with his. He couldn't help but use some strength to hold her hand firmly in his palm. His body was cold, so every time Gu Xingyin had physical contact with him, he would feel extremely warm and satisfied. Qingyun, you shouldn't be like this. Gu Xingyin lifted her head from his embrace. She looked straight at Yu Qingyun. You should believe in me, and believe in yourself. Gu Xingyin tilted her head. Let me ask you, if one day you find out that I've changed, that I'm not as good looking as I am now, or that my personality has become violent, will you stop liking me and leave me? Yu Qingyun shook her head. No, I will never leave you. He didn't know why he would say such a thing. But it was this kind of words that seemed natural, as if it was the right thing to do. Loving her had become an indelible part of his life. Then I'm the same, Gu Xingyin said softly. Yu Qingyun's heart trembled. Gu Xingyin just continued, I'm the same as you, Qingyun. No matter what you become in the future, what will happen between you and me? She used her other hand to cover her heart. Here, the original intention of loving you will never change. Chapter 1683. Yu Qingyun's Adam's apple moved. He called Gu Xingyin's name, Beiyan. But he didn't know what to say. Gu Xingyin patiently allowed him to hug her. It was not until a long time later that Yu Qingyun spoke again. Beiyan, let's get married after you graduate, okay? Okay. For years passed very quickly for many people, but for others, it was very slow. To Yu Qingyun, this was undoubtedly an extremely difficult period of time. He had made all the preparations in the past 4 years, and he was only waiting for his bride to fall into his arms. Yu Qingyue dressed herself up and looked at Gu Xingyin beside her. She said sincerely, Beiyan, you're so beautiful. Yu Qingyue felt that Gu Xingyin was finally going to marry her brother. This day had finally come. She was the bridesmaid of the bride. Her brother was afraid that the bride would be nervous, so he specially asked her, a good friend, to accompany her. Yu Qingyue had long been used to her brother's behavior of having a wife but not a sister. Fortunately, it was Beiyan. Otherwise, she wouldn't have bothered. Looking at Gu Xingyin, who was dressed up and sitting on the sofa, Yu Qingyue opened her eyes wide and exclaimed, You're really beautiful today. There was no one in the room at this time. Yu Qingyue leaned in front of Gu Xingyin and whispered with a smile, My brother has been holding back for so many years. I'm afraid you're going to charm him to death today. Gu Xingyin glanced at Yu Qingyue calmly and didn't say anything. This girl had always been trying to make fun of her and her brother. Most of the time, she was slapped in the face by the two of them. Seeing that today was a joyous wedding day, Gu Xingyin decided to let her go and not argue with her. Yu Qingyun was wearing a well-ironed suit and holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand. He stood there quietly, waiting for the person who was about to hold his hand for the rest of his life. Some female guests were standing by the side and watching the scene. When they saw his handsome face, they blushed and whispered to each other. These years, rumors about the crown prince of the Yu family and his fiancée had been circulating in the upper class of Chuannan City. Everyone knew that the crown prince of the Yu family treated his fiancée like the apple of his eye. Such a handsome, strong and affectionate man was the most attractive to women no matter the time. "The bride is here," someone shouted. Yu Qingyun turned around and looked at the person she cared about in her heart. Her father was holding her hand and walking towards her. Mo's feelings were complicated at this moment. His daughter, the pearl in his palm, from today onwards, he would personally hand her over to another person. From then on, there would be another man who would replace him as her father and become the most intimate and important person in her life. To dote on her, pamper her, protect her, let her live SSSSSMO, SSSAZZZZ, ants to, S to live to, TSS. Su Qingyun knew that his father-in-law's feelings were probably complicated at this moment. He just held Gu Xingyin's hand tightly and promised her father. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll protect Bayan's S for the rest of her life. I'll let her be safe and happy and be the happiest woman." Yu Qingyun held his wife's hand and the two of them walked to the end of the red carpet. His grip was firm, and his step was steady. Their lives in the future would be just like this path, steady and smooth. They would keep walking. Chapter 1684. Gu Xingyin returned to the pure white space. This place was no longer the pure white space. She used her power to create a house, land, and spring here. It was like a new world. There was even a small green figure flying between the spring and the forest. It was the little kingfisher. Seeing Gu Xingyin open her eyes, the little kingfisher seemed to be very happy as it flew towards her. Gu Xingyin spread out her hands, allowing the little kingfisher to rest on her palms. It even stretched out its small red beak and pecked her twice. Gu Xingyin could not help but laugh. "I don't have anything you want to eat here." After sending the little kingfisher away, Gu Xingyin said to the system, "Let's go to the next mission world." The system was surprised. "Host, you don't want to try?" Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I still have self-awareness. With the power I have now, I can only walk a short distance in the space crack and save my life. It is easier said than done to truly transcend it." The system was silent. It just did not think that the host would be able to analyze this point so calmly. Regarding the space crack, the system knew a lot more than the host. It also knew that with the host's current power, there was still a long way to go. Begin the transfer to the next world. "Yes, host." Gu Xingyin was now very used to the dizziness she felt when she was transferred to another world. She calmly opened her eyes. When she saw the situation in the room, she was stunned. This was a very large and bright room. She saw that her room was densely packed with things. There were ordinary animals, strange creatures, and even a few people. What is this situation? Beginning the transmission of the plot. The system's voice rang out. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes and felt the information transmitted by the system. When she opened her eyes again, there was a trace of curiosity in her eyes. She slowly stood up. At this time, she realized that she was wearing a large black cloak. The hem of the cloak even extended to the ground. Gu Xingyin walked up to the animals and reached out her hand. It was cold and hard to the touch. These things were not living creatures at all. According to the plot transmitted by the system just now, Gu Xingyin knew that the original owner, Dean, was a puppet master. In modern society, there were very few puppeteers. At the very least, Diane had never seen one before. Dean didn't know about her family. She was adopted by her master, who was also a puppet master. She was raised and taught her the art of puppetry. Then, when she was 12 years old, that gloomy old lady lost her life. Diane had been living in this desolate mountain. The puppets in her hands would capture prey for her and maintain her vitality. There would also be some people who would come to visit her and ask her to do something for them. They would also pay her a generous sum of money. Diane, who didn't have any concept of good and evil, did things based on her heart. She had saved people and taken people's lives. In the eyes of the small group of people who knew about her, she was an extremely eccentric person. Diane didn't know what kind of ability she had, but after Gu Xingyin sensed it, she gasped. This body, according to the cultivation world saying, was a Yin girl born in the Yin year, Yin month, Yin day, Yin hour. This kind of body was the easiest to condense the power of extreme Yin and cultivate some evil techniques. She could also achieve unimaginable achievements. Chapter 1685. The so-called puppet technique that she practiced was to use special materials to refine puppets that she wanted. Then, she would use spells or other mediums to control these puppets for her own use. Because of her physique, most of the puppets that she refined carried Yin energy. In the human world, it was an extremely ominous thing. Moreover, if Yin energy was condensed endlessly, it would be possible for it to condense its own consciousness in the right time and place. Of course, such a situation was so rare that it was almost negligible. But coincidentally, there was such a puppet beside Gu Xingyin that had condensed Yin energy. It was her mount, White Tiger. White Tiger was her early creation. At that time, her master was still alive and gave her some ancient books to read every day. She happened to see the legendary White Tiger that suppressed evil energy. It was funny when she thought about it. The puppet formed by the Yin energy was actually called White Tiger. But no matter how strange it was, she had such a puppet that had developed its own consciousness. White Tiger was fierce by nature, but it had a natural closeness to its master. It was almost the only companion that Yin could pass the time with. Back to the plot. The female supporting character in this world was called Chinchichi. She came from a very powerful family. Chinchichi was the second daughter of that family, but she was a very ambitious person. She had an older brother. According to the family rules, the first successor of the family in the future was her brother, not her. Naturally, Chinchichi was not satisfied. She heard about Yin's existence from somewhere and came to see her in person with a big gift. What she asked Yin to do was to create a puppet that could absorb people's vitality. Then, slowly and defenselessly, she would let her brother die. Yin rejected her. The reason for the rejection was not that Yin felt that this matter was not good, but that Yin did not like the arrogant tone in her words. Chinchichi obviously did not expect that Yin would reject her. She continued to pester endlessly. In the end, she was driven out by Yin in a very embarrassing manner. Yin had always done things according to her own wishes. She would not look at other people's faces, nor would she care about other people's feelings. Because of this, Chinchichi harbored hatred in her heart. Later on, Chinchichi found an evil sorcerer. It was said that he was a tame head sorcerer from Thailand and Malaysia. Her elder brother had fallen down inexplicably when he woke up early in the morning and became a vegetable since then. Chinchichi, who had successfully become the successor of the family, began to deal with those who had offended her. The first to bear the brunt was Dean. At first, she wanted to kidnap Dean, but Dean's puppets were not to be trifled with. After suffering countless losses, Chinchichi decided to go all the way. She found a group of people and burned down the entire forest where Diane was located in the dead of night. Diane died in the fire that lasted for 10 days and 10 nights. She could have left, but she couldn't bring her puppets with her. Diane never cared about the thoughts of humans, but the puppets she created were her family. Since she couldn't protect them, she might as well accompany them. Life and death were not that important to Diane. Gu Xingyin quietly finished reading the plot and fell into silence. Strictly speaking, a person like Diane was not a bad person. She had never harbored malice toward anyone, but others were not willing to let her go. Chapter 1686. Looking back at the time, Gu Xingyin found that Dean had already rejected Chinchichi at this time. In other words, the seeds of conflict between the two sides had been planted. Chinchichi was a narrow-minded and vengeful person. Gu Xingyin would never think of turning hostility into friendship with her. Thinking about it carefully, this period of time happened to be when Chinchichi found the foreign witch doctor to perform the black magic on her brother. She didn't know if it was successful or not. Chinchichi would not let her go. Gu Xingyin thought at this moment that she had to take some precautions in advance. She looked at the room full of puppets in front of her. These things were not as horrible as Gu Xingyin had imagined before. On the contrary, they were lifelike. Even the small animals looked a little cute. Gu Xingyin looked at the doll that had not been fully formed in her hand. Among all the puppets that looked like human children were the most powerful. They were also the puppets that looked like dolls. Whether they were used to pray for blessings or curses. Gu Xingyin didn't know the origin of this point. However, it was written in the secret book that she had been practicing, and her master had always taught her this way. Gu Xingyin looked at the doll in her hand. Its facial features had been formed, and half of its body had been formed. Obviously, Dean hadn't finished the rest of the work. At present, it was only the first step. Generally, the appearance of a puppet was the most basic. After the appearance was done, the puppet master still needed to draw charms on the body of the doll. If the puppet master wanted a better effect, he could even take a drop of his own blood and drip it on the puppet. This could make the puppet master and the puppet closer. The powerful puppet master could even connect his mind with the puppet and control the puppet with his consciousness. This doll was originally made by Dean as a housekeeper at the request of a person. However, Gu Xingyin didn't want to give it to that person now, because that person was a very cunning and sinister real estate developer who had even killed several people. Dean did not care about these things, but Gu Xingyin did not like such people. Seeing that it was getting late, Gu Xingyin put down the half-finished product in her hand and planned to go out for lunch. After she walked out, she realized what kind of place she was in. This was a valley surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. There was only one exit leading to the outside world. The house Gu Xingyin lived in was a wooden house with simple decorations. On the other hand, the puppet house she was in was different. Dian had spent a lot of effort to build that house. He used some special materials to ensure that there would be sufficient brightness regardless of day or night for her to refine puppets. System, skill extraction, Gu Xingyin said to the system as he walked. Ding. Congratulations to the host. You have obtained the blood breed talent skill, bloodline power. Gu Xingyin was puzzled. Does this mean that I can obtain the power of the blood race? The system replied, no. Gu Xingyin was puzzled. Then what does it mean? The system explained, this so-called talent skill means that the host's bloodline now contains the host's own power. And the blood that contains the bloodline power will have a greater effect in some aspects. For example? Gu Xingyin asked. The system gave an example. For example, in this mission world, if the host adds his own blood to the puppet, there might be an unexpected surprise. Chapter 1687. Gu Xingyin roughly understood what the system meant. So, this skill can make my blood valuable? She didn't know whether she should complain or not. Forget it, let's find something to eat first. Thankfully, although Dean lived alone in the mountains and forests like an ancient human, the house still had modern facilities. Gu Xingyin was quite satisfied with this. She walked out of the door and a black light flashed on her body. A huge white tiger appeared beside her. This was the white tiger that had developed self-awareness. The white tiger's situation was due to the excessive amount of yin energy in its body, which gave rise to power and self-awareness. In other words, it could be said that the yin energy had become a spirit, and this white tiger puppet's body could only be regarded as a carrier. Therefore, this white tiger already had the preliminary ability to become a spirit, such as freely changing its size. When there was nothing to do, the white tiger liked to become small and hide in Dean's pocket or sleeve. Even if those who did not know the reason saw it, they would at most think that it was a lifelike figurine. At this time, the white tiger whimpered and rubbed its big head against Gu Xingyin's robe. Its intention was obvious. It wanted Gu Xingyin to climb onto its body. Gu Xingyin reached out and patted the white tiger's big head. She refused. I don't feel like moving today. White tiger, can you go and find me something to eat? The white tiger probably had the IQ of a 7 or 8-year-old human child. It could understand Gu Xingyin's words, but it had not cultivated to the level where it could speak human language. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, the white tiger whimpered twice in a low voice. Then, like a gust of wind, it ran into the dense forest not far away. Gu Shengyin was not too worried about White Tiger's safety. As a puppet, White Tiger's combat power was stronger than that of an ordinary tiger. At the very least, its fur was almost invulnerable. No wild beast in the entire forest could bite through it. Seeing a small river not far away, Gu Shengyin walked towards it. In the reflection in the water, Gu Shengyin saw the appearance of this body for the first time. White, pale, extremely white. The young girl in the water's shadow seemed to have no color on her face. Her skin color was extremely abnormal. However, her lips were a thick purplish color. It wasn't because of her rosy lips. It was as if she had a serious illness. There was no emotion in her deep eyes, as if she was a beauty made of porcelain. In Gu Shengyin's words, if a normal person saw Dean's appearance, they would probably think of two things. Firstly, this girl had an extremely serious and incurable disease, and it seemed like she would soon die. Secondly, he was an avid fan of medieval Gothic style, or rather, a cosplay enthusiast. Especially with the dark robe on Gu Shengyin's body, she looked like a dark witch. However, this appearance, in the eyes of normal people, was extremely tempting. She was like a poppy in the dark. Everyone knew that she was dangerous, but there was no way to stop themselves from being attracted to her and falling for her. Even from a woman's point of view, Gu Shengyin admitted that Dean's appearance did have an extremely evil and fallen beauty. It was very tempting. This was not only because of her appearance, but more because of her identity as a woman of Yin Hour. A woman of Yin Hour was a great tonic for any man. Chapter 1688. Gu Shengyin stretched out her hands. Her hands were as white as jade, full of luster and beauty, but they did not carry the aura of a living person. On her slender fingertips were long purple nails. These nails were very beautiful. If they were discovered by nail art enthusiasts, they would probably excitedly ask which shop could make such a good result. However, Gu Shengyin knew that these nails were not only beautiful, but also dangerous. She gently raised her hand and pinched the branch of a big tree that hung down next to her. She curled her index finger and gently scratched the leaf. The full green leaf quickly withered and turned yellow at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, it lost all its vitality. Gu Shengyin let go of her hand and looked at her fingernails again. The Yin energy lingering around her could turn any part of her body into a deadly weapon. Fortunately, these unpredictable forces could be controlled by her, so Gu Shengyin did not have to worry too much. White Tiger came back quickly. The prey it brought back today was a kid. When the prey came to Gu Shengyin, it was already dead. Gu Shengyin looked at the food and thought carefully. Diane could only cook 2 dishes, roast and boil. And her cooking skills were not good. According to the memory Gu Shengyin received, saying that her cooking skills were not good was actually a compliment. Diane's cooking skills could be said to be terrible. Fortunately, the puppets did not need to eat, and Diane herself was not particular about the taste of food at all. She only needed to fill her stomach. Gu Shengyin did not want to treat her taste buds badly. Lin Sanjiu cut off 2 lamb legs with a knife, washed and skinned them. After everything was done, she went to the house to find some seasonings that Diane had never used before. One of Diane's previous clients had specially contracted for all her daily necessities. Unfortunately, Diane could not use it at all. Gu Shengyin looked at it. Well, fortunately, it did not expire. She made a fire, grilled the lamb legs, and slowly brushed honey and various seasonings on them. She began to think about the mission target. According to the system's feedback, Qin Chichi had already made a move on her brother. The original successor of the Qin family was now in a vegetative state. As for Qin Chichi, she was busy fighting for power with various people in the family. There was still some time before she could secure her position as the heir. Gu Shengyin now had several methods. First, he could make the first move and kill Qin Chichi before she attacked him. However, after thinking for a while, Gu Shengyin gave up the idea. Qin Chichi's black magic master was always by her side. Gu Shengyin didn't have anything close to her, so it was unlikely that she would succeed. unless he went to the imperial capital in person. However, the imperial capital was the Qin family's main base. Gu Shengyin was afraid that by that time, Qin Chichi would have already taken control of everything. Secondly, he had to find a way to remove the curse on the eldest son of the Qin family. The Qin family's eldest young master was not mentioned in the storyline. She only knew that he was 23 years old and was a very powerful man. The reason why he fell for it this time was because he never believed in such unorthodox methods. At the same time, he was not prepared for his biological sister, who had the same father and mother, to make a move on him. If the Qin family's eldest young master woke up and found out that it was all his sister's doing, the Qin family would probably become lively. With Qin Chichi's methods, she might not necessarily be a match for the Qin family's eldest young master, who had been raised as the heir since childhood. Chapter 6. The male lead should be getting thicker soon, not White Tiger. Continue to ask for more votes. The more votes there are, the more energetic aloof branch will be in writing. See you later. Chapter 1689. Gu Shengyin slowly rotated the barbecue rack in her hand. She was thinking about all kinds of things. Done. A strong aroma came from the barbecue rack. Gu Shengyin sniffed it gently. The white tiger lay quietly beside her. Gu Shengyin looked at the white tiger with some regret. After all, it was a puppet. It was different from a real life after all. In this situation, if the white tiger was really a beast, it would probably jump up and eat the meat. Gu Shengyin slowly cut the meat with a clean knife and chewed. It tasted good. After eating the whole leg of the lamb, Gu Shengyin wrapped the remaining leg with a clean leaf and prepared to eat it for dinner. She walked to her big room. The half-completed puppet doll was still lying there alone. Gu Shengyin planned to finish it. It was also because Gu Shengyin had already accomplished so much. Otherwise, Gu Shengyin did not intend to continue. She had thought about it. She would not make so many puppets. After she finished the puppet doll in her hand, she would go to the capital. Instead of waiting for others to come to her door, it was better to seize the opportunity and make the first move. Anyway, Qin Chichi was not a good person. Gu Shengyin would not bear any burden because of it. Puppet dolls were different from clay sculptures and so on. His four limbs were separated and refined with special materials, and then pieced together. This way, it could ensure the flexibility of the joints. As for the special materials, Gu Shengyin only knew that they were collected according to the ancient books. Some materials with very obscure names were refined with a very special method. The finished product refined in this way looked similar to porcelain. It was smooth, delicate, and very beautiful. However, the degree of hardness was completely different from porcelain. Take the white tiger for example. Basically, if it fell from a height of dozens of meters, the possibility of the white tiger being crippled was not high. For Gu Shengyin, who received Dean's memory and had the invincible system, refining the materials and carving the appearance of the body was not difficult. The key was the runes at the back. He couldn't afford to make even the slightest mistake. If there was even the slightest mistake, this puppet would be completely destroyed. Gu Shengyin quietly looked at the porcelain doll in front of her. He looked very small, about the size of a person's head. His skin was snow-white, and his face was delicate. His eyes were tightly shut, and he was wearing a silver-white ancient-style robe. He looked no different from a normal child. At this stage, the doll would probably be a very beautiful piece of art. Perhaps someone would spend a lot of money to buy it for their collection. Gu Shengyin took a deep breath and decided to wait until nighttime. He would wait until the moon was out and the yin qi was thicker, then he would draw the runes and condense the yin qi on his body. She got up and realized that after sitting for an entire afternoon, her entire body was stiff and sore. Gu Shengyin glanced around the large house. Looking at all kinds of humanoid and beast-shaped puppets, she felt lucky that this place was always brightly lit. If she suddenly entered such a place at night, she would probably be shocked. When she went out, the sun had already set in the west. Gu Shengyin went to pick some edible mushrooms and used the remaining mutton to boil a pot of soup. She put the mushrooms into the soup and heated up the leftover roast mutton leg for dinner. Chapter 1690. The woman's eyes lit up. Really? The man's face darkened when he heard her questioning tone. He snorted coldly. What? You don't believe me? The woman sensed his displeasure and quickly smiled. How could that be? I naturally believe in your abilities. It's just that my brother has always been lucky. The bald man's expression eased a little, but he still looked disdainful. So what if he's lucky? He won't be able to escape from me just because he's lucky. The woman's face lit up with joy. She took the initiative to hug the man's arm and gently rubbed it against her chest. The meaning behind this was self-evident. Then, Chi-Chi, I'll wait for your good news. The following scene was not suitable for children. They could only see two naked bodies tightly entwined together on a large black bed. Just as Biyau's consciousness was about to fall into a deep sleep, a huge suction force suddenly came from somewhere. It passed through the layers of gray fog and sucked him in. Oh no. The bald man with runes on his head, who had just finished a round of sex and was resting on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. What's wrong? Chi-Chi asked in a daze as she nestled in his arms. The tame headmaster's expression was very ugly. The black magic I cast on your brother has been broken. What? Chi-Chi immediately woke up. What's going on? Didn't you say it was foolproof? Chi-Chi's expression was also a little ugly. Now you're telling me it's been broken? Chi-Chi was actually a little uneasy. She thought about her brother's usual methods. If he found out that she was the one who had set him up, the tame headmaster said, I used black magic to seal his soul in an area with no spiritual energy. According to the original plan, his soul would be destroyed in 10 days, and he would die in this world. He frowned. But just now, I felt that his soul suddenly disappeared from the area of no spiritual energy. It was as if something had barged in and forcibly taken away your brother's soul. Chi-Chi was a little anxious. Then what do we do now? If my brother wakes up, neither of us will be able to escape. The tame headmaster said calmly, Don't worry. He closed his eyes and muttered something under his breath, as if he was sensing something. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes, and his expression relaxed. Chi-Chi looked at him and felt a little relieved. How is it? The tame headmaster said, You and I don't have to worry too much. I just sense that your brother's soul hasn't returned to his body. Instead, he can no longer be sensed in this world. Chi-Chi was delighted. So? The tame headmaster smiled and said, So, your brother is either dead or some evil sorcerer just happened to cast a spell and took his soul. After the huge rock in his heart was lifted, his mood became much better. The taming master looked at Chi-Chi in his arms and couldn't help but reach out to pinch her face. Don't worry. Even if your brother isn't dead, I'm afraid that his life will be worse than death if he falls into the hands of such a person. Chi-Chi's heart finally relaxed. However, she still said in a low voice, I don't wish for him to live a life worse than death. It's better if he dies quickly so as to avoid any more trouble. Chapter 1691. Biyao felt as though his entire body was being pulled. He did not know how much time had passed as the world spun around him. His body, his thoughts, his everything seemed to be constantly being torn apart and reassembled. Until everything settled down. He felt that his body was very heavy. It was as though he was trapped inside something and was unable to move. He was also unable to open his eyes. However, he could still see his surroundings. It seemed to be night time as his surroundings were not bright at all. However, he could clearly see his surroundings. A woman in black was sitting before him. This woman was very good-looking. However, her appearance was very abnormal. It looked like, what did she look like? His thoughts were in a mess and he was unable to recall anything. The woman used her pale and thin hand to draw something on his body. Originally, he should not have felt it. However, he slowly sensed that as the mysterious runes on his body became denser, his entire body was slowly filled with power. His feelings towards the woman in black also became clearer. Oh, the smell on her body was very comfortable. There seemed to be something on her body that attracted him greatly. He wanted to get close to her, hug her, and eat her up. After finishing the last rune, Gu Xingyin gave a long sigh of relief. She opened her eyes and put down the brush in her somewhat sore hand. In truth, not even half an hour had passed. However, Gu Xingyin felt that her entire body was lacking in strength. She lowered her eyes to look at the little doll in front of her. His body, which was originally white like porcelain, was now covered with countless runes. Under the dim moonlight, the doll appeared to be filled with a sense of mystery. Gu Xingyin moved her hand and put the little silver robe on the doll. She also felt the results of her work. It actually managed to condense so much yin energy. She was extremely shocked. In terms of energy, this little puppet doll was almost comparable to the white tiger. Just as Gu Xingyin was feeling shocked, the little puppet doll in front of her suddenly opened its eyes. Gu Xingyin was shocked. Then, she saw the beautiful pair of jade-green eyes of the doll. Under the dim moonlight, the pair of eyes were like two clusters of ghostly fire, looking somewhat horrifying. It actually opened its eyes on its own. Could it be that this puppet doll already has its own consciousness? Gu Xingyin mumbled doubtfully. He blinked and looked at the woman in front of him. With his current ability to understand, he still couldn't fully understand the meaning of her words. But it was fine. Gu Xingyin looked at the tiny puppet doll that was no more than 20 centimeters tall. It blinked its eyes and started moving on its own. His movements were not stiff at all. He crawled from her gown all the way to her hand. What was he trying to do? Gu Xingyin soon found out. Because the little doll suddenly hugged her finger and started nibbling on it. His teeth were very sharp. In an instant, they had already pierced through Gu Xingyin's flesh and sunk into her skin, sucking her sweet blood. The moment she felt the pain, Gu Xingyin raised her hand and wanted to throw the doll away. However, the system stopped her. Host, wait a moment. Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, there were more things in her mind. Some messy thoughts were vaguely mixed with emotions like delicious and delicious. Chapter 1692. Gu Xingyin was stunned. This was the puppet doll's thought process? While she was still in shock, the puppet doll in front of her suddenly stopped sucking her blood. He was still hugging Gu Xingyin's finger, but gently and reluctantly, he retracted his teeth. Because he saw that when he bit down, this person seemed to be in pain. Although he liked to eat, she was in pain. The puppet doll hesitated for a few seconds, but still decided to give up on the delicacy. He even stuck out his tongue and licked Gu Xingyin's finger a few times. Under his licking, the small wound miraculously stopped bleeding and became much smaller. Then, the two people, one big and one small, started staring at each other. Gu Xingyin had never encountered such a situation before. She asked the system, "What kind of situation is this?" The system replied, "I have not encountered such a situation either. Host, please wait for a moment. I will quickly go through the information." The system quickly said, "There are no special records of this situation." However, according to the information passed down by the puppet masters, the system deduced that when the host created this puppet doll, the host already had a mental connection with it. Furthermore, the host used his own blood to feed it. Now, the host seems to have formed a blood contract between the two of them. So now, the puppet doll is equivalent to the host's magical item. However, it has its own consciousness. The host should be able to share consciousness with it. Gu Xingyin nodded. Yes, I seem to be able to sense its thoughts. Speaking of this, Gu Xingyin wanted to facepalm. Because at this moment, from the puppet doll's thought process, she felt a strong sense of, I like you very much, I want to eat you, delicious, and other similar emotions. Without a doubt, the delicious object that it wanted to eat was herself. However, what warmed Gu Xingyin's heart was that there was another wave of emotions in the puppet doll's mind. It was probably the thoughts of, like, pain, and don't want, pain. While Gu Xingyin was talking to the system, the puppet doll gave up looking at Gu Xingyin. It grabbed Gu Xingyin's clothes and started to climb up. He crawled from her hand to her shoulder, then found her collarbone and lay on it with satisfaction. So warm, so fragrant, delicious, hold it in. Gu Xingyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she sensed the information transmitted by the little doll. System, he wants to eat me? The system calmly comforted her. Host, you don't have to worry. For the puppet consciousness condensed from Yin Qi, the woman of Yin Hour has a great attraction to them. Furthermore, your blood has been sucked by him. After the two of you formed a contract, as a puppet doll that has just gained sentience, the current host is similar to his mother. He will like you very much, want to get close to you, and even want to monopolize you. This kind of puppet will not bite back at the host. Gu Xingyin nodded. She did feel a strong desire in the puppet doll's consciousness, but there was another stronger desire that seemed to be restraining him. And in the dark, Gu Xingyin also had a feeling that this puppet doll was not only unwilling to hurt her in its consciousness, but also seemed to be bound in its soul that it could not hurt its creator. Chapter 1693. However, she kept hearing him say that he wanted to eat her. Gu Xingyin still could not get used to it. Some things seemed to be engraved in the depths of this body. Gu Xingyin's consciousness swept across the puppet doll, and then cut off some kind of connection. Then, she realized that the emotions of the other consciousness, which had been constantly making its presence known in her mind, had disappeared. She heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Xingyin tilted her head and looked at the satisfied puppet doll lying on her neck. She felt helpless, but strangely satisfied. She slowly stood up, and a strong sense of fatigue came over her. She did not feel this way when she was sitting down, but once she stood up, Gu Xingyin felt as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out. She stood for a long time before she slowly recovered and walked towards her little wooden house. What she needed most now was rest. As for the rest, she would deal with it tomorrow morning. Gu Xingyin forced herself to walk into her house. After a simple wash, she fell asleep almost instantly. She was really too tired. Faint moonlight shone in through the open window. The puppet doll, which seemed to have no signs of life all this time, moved slightly. He used his short and chubby hands to prop himself up and sat up. His gaze swept across the room. I don't know what this place is. After looking around, the puppet doll looked at the woman lying on the ground. She had her eyes closed, and her expression was as cold as when she was awake. The puppet doll tilted his head and looked at her quietly. After an unknown period of time, he raised his little hand. His dark purple fingernails looked exactly like Gu Xingyin's. He seemed to be curious as he gently scratched Gu Xingyin's lips. He was really careful, as if he was scratching an itch. Although he did not have any complicated consciousness, the puppet doll still knew that his fingernails seemed to be very powerful. He could not use too much strength. Otherwise, she would be in trouble. So soft, so warm. That was the puppet doll's feeling. His own body was just a pile of cold materials, and the body temperature of a human was a very attractive existence to him. Not to mention, from the moment he saw the person in front of him, he couldn't help but want to get close to her. The puppet doll seemed to be addicted to playing with it. After a while, it would poke Gu Xingyin's mouth. Then, it would open its emerald-like eyes and carefully look at Gu Xingyin. After making sure that she wouldn't wake up, he continued to poke her. He treated this as an extremely fun game, and never got tired of it. The system, it didn't need to rest as it silently watched the puppet doll's actions. The system actually wanted to shout loudly in Gu Xingyin's mind, "Wake up, host. There's an effective pervert taking advantage of you while you're sleeping." But in the end, the system remained silent. This was because it could tell that the puppet doll seemed to be a little fellow that didn't know anything. Moreover, its behavior showed that it really liked to get close to its host. Of course, the main reason why the system remained silent was that the host was really too tired. It rarely had such good sleep, so it didn't want to disturb it. After playing for a while, the puppet doll finally seemed to be satisfied. It looked left and right, and still chose the warm spot between Gu Xingyin's neck. It closed its eyes and fell asleep with its host. Chapter 1694. The next day, Gu Xingyin was woken up by a disturbance. She felt her hair being pulled by something. The other party didn't have much strength, so it didn't hurt. But this feeling of having a part of her body being played with in the palm of someone else's hand was really unpleasant. In a daze, she casually pulled her hair and flipped over impatiently. This was great. Originally, the puppet doll was sitting on the side of Gu Xingyin's bed, holding her long hair and twirling it in circles. However, his technique was obviously not very good. He accidentally wrapped his wrists and fingers around the hair and was trying hard to untie it. Then, with Gu Xingyin's tug, he flipped over. The puppet doll, whose fingers and wrists were entangled, was pulled by a huge force just like that, Biyao. In a perfect parabola, the small figure flew directly from the inside of the bed to the floor outside the window. This time, the hair was untied. In a daze, Gu Xingyin heard the sound of something falling to the ground. She opened her eyes and saw a small figure in front of her in a prostrating position on the ground, trying hard to get up. Gu Xingyin, she silently thought about it and realized that she seemed to have done something terrible. Just as she was feeling awkward, the puppet doll finally sat up on its own. However, she didn't know if it was because Gu Xingyin had a bad taste when she made it, but this doll's limbs were short and small, but it was very fat. Gu Xingyin watched as the doll tried to stand up on its own several times, but in the end, it sat back down on its butt. Pfft! Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh out loud. Early in the morning, her mood improved because of this. Hearing the laughter behind him, the puppet doll turned around expressionlessly. She didn't know if it was Gu Xingyin's illusion, but she seemed to have seen a hint of grievance from the doll's cute and serious expression. Gu Xingyin coughed dryly and secretly wondered if it was inappropriate for her to laugh at this little guy. She was about to get off the bed and pick him up when she saw the doll actually flew up. Technically speaking, it should be floating. Gu Xingyin felt like she was watching a fantasy film. She watched as the little meatball floated up from the ground without the help of any tools and slowly floated in the direction of Gu Xingyin. Then, with a thud sound, it landed on the soft blanket on the bed. Gu Xingyin, the puppet doll, seemed to be hit by the impact. His short limbs struggled in the soft blanket for a long time before he finally pulled himself out and sat in front of Gu with a serious expression. SSSSSS, she's SSSS with face SSS, the two people SS's again. Gu Xingyin, pfft, ha 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 ha. She hugged her stomach and laughed until she was out of breath on the bed. Where's the object? TSTS, where's the perverse? Gu Xingyin expressed that he only saw stupidity. The puppet doll tilted its head and looked at its master with an exaggerated expression. He didn't know that it was a smile, but the bloodline contract allowed him to feel that the person in front of him was very happy. It was a very comfortable feeling. Although it looked strange, it was fine as long as she was comfortable. He thought to himself with a serious expression, allowing his master to laugh on his own. Chapter 1695. When Gu Xingyin was finally done laughing, she straightened her body and looked at the little figure in front of her. I have to give you a name. She frowned as if she was thinking about something. A name? The puppet doll was confused. He knew what it was. It was probably something like a code name. He felt that he should have a name. What should he be called? He was called, I'll call you doll. Anyway, I won't make any other dolls, Gu Xingyin said to herself. She looked at the little figure in front of her. You should be able to understand what I'm saying, right? From now on, your name will be Doll. The puppet doll stared at Gu Xingyin with his big green eyes and nodded. Then Gu Xingyin pointed at herself. I'm your master. My name is Diane. She just said it casually. She didn't intend for the little doll to remember it. But the next moment, the little doll's rosy mouth actually stuttered these two words. Diane, Gu Xingyin was surprised. How could his spiritual intelligence be so high? Even if she went through Diane's memories, she rarely saw a puppet that could do what Doll did. Could it be that the so-called power of the blood race in her body really made this puppet so powerful that it even surpassed all her previous works? Gu Xingyin didn't understand. This was probably the most likely possibility. She thought for a moment and was about to get up. She had already made up her mind. After packing up here, she would set off for the capital. She would try to secretly cure the eldest son of the Qin family. This morning, the system told her that the black magic spell cast by the black magic master on the eldest son of the Qin family had been broken. This was out of the original plot. According to the original plot, today should be the day that the eldest son of the Qin family died. The black magic spell cast by the black magic master was not broken. Old Master Chen had invited several masters, but they all said that they couldn't do anything. Could it be that some hidden powerful figure had made a move? Although the eldest son of the Qin family didn't die, he didn't wake up. The system didn't know the reason. Gu Xingyin planned to go and see for herself. But this little kid in front of him, Gu Xingyin helplessly looked at him. I'm going to wash my face. You lie on my shoulder. Be careful not to get wet. The doll pretended not to hear her and continued to hold on tightly to Gu Xingyin's collar as if she was afraid that she would take her down. Seeing him like this, Gu Xingyin couldn't do anything. Until she realized that no matter if she bent down or walked, the other party was still sitting steadily on Mount Tai without any signs of falling, she let him be. Gu Xingyin had an inexplicable feeling that she was raising a son. Walking out of the door, Gu Xingyin released the white tiger and prepared to let it hunt for prey as today's rations. As soon as the white tiger was released, it howled and rubbed against Gu Xingyin's body. In an instant, Gu Xingyin felt a little cold. The white tiger also sensed something. It took a step away from Gu Xingyin's side and roared towards Gu Xingyin's left side. She felt something and looked towards her shoulder. She saw a doll that she had never seen before. The little doll still looked the same, but at this moment, there was a faint glow in his green eyes. There was also a trace of black evil aura coming out of his body. He stared coldly at the white tiger, and there was a cold murderous intent in his eyes. This appearance was somewhat similar to the evil creatures in the legends. Doll, I'm jealous. 6th update. 4th update today. Please, vote, vote. Today's votes were half of yesterday's. Gao Lingji was scared. Monday was too scary. Chapter 1696. White Tiger sensed the danger too. It lowered its body and scratched the ground uneasily with its front paws. It let out a warning growl, which was a sign of encountering a strong enemy. Gu Xingyin suddenly had an idea. She was about to stop it when a black shadow flashed in front of her. A black mist escaped from Doll's body and formed a ferocious ghost face in the air. It pounced on White Tiger at an extremely fast speed. It did not seem like it was going to show any mercy. White Tiger flashed its sharp claws. Gu Xingyin saw White Tiger's huge body fighting with the black shadow. Finally, White Tiger roared and swallowed the black shadow. However, in Gu Xingyin's eyes, the White Tiger's specially refined fur, which even bullets could not penetrate, had a few holes gnawed out of it by the ghost face. The system exclaimed, "Host, your doll is so fierce." Gu Xingyin was speechless. What was with the unpleasant feeling of having her line stolen? Seeing that the two of them were still at daggers drawn and ready to attack again, Gu Xingyin couldn't be bothered to say anything. He subconsciously gave 2 orders in his mind. Stop. The White Tiger obediently stopped what it was doing and raised its head to roar at Gu Xingyin. However, Doll resisted. Gu Xingyin could feel that he was unwilling to let go. She gave another order. Doll stared at Gu Xingyin with his green eyes and finally lowered his head unwillingly. The black mist around him returned to his body, as if nothing had happened. He felt Gu Xingyin's emotions from the bottom of his heart. His master was unhappy because he was disobedient. Doll raised his head again and carefully poked Gu Xingyin's earlobe with his sharp nails. When Gu Xingyin turned to look at him, his expression immediately said, "I know I'm wrong, I didn't do anything." It had to be said that having such a face was still very advantageous. At the very least, Gu Xingyin lost her temper instantly. Gu Xingyin sat on the ground while White Tiger lay beside her. The doll felt wronged as Gu Xingyin forcefully pulled it off her body and placed it on the other side. Gu Xingyin looked at the two of them seriously. She didn't open her mouth. Instead, she used her mind to communicate with them. The gist of it was that they shouldn't go against each other anymore. Everyone was the same, so they should get along well. White Tiger quickly made his intentions clear. The other party had malicious intentions towards him. Gu Xingyin looked at Doll, who hadn't said anything. Then, she felt Doll's intermittent thoughts transmitted to her. "You're not allowed to get close to me. Mine is mine." Gu Xingyin froze. She didn't understand what the doll was trying to say. It wasn't until Doll couldn't help but move and climb onto her shoulder that she realized that he was talking about her. Just as the system had said, Doll was extremely close to her and had developed a terrifying possessive desire. However, perhaps because of his cute appearance, Gu Xingyin didn't feel disgusted. Instead, she felt slightly helpless. Could it be that Doll really thought of her as his mother? It wasn't strange for children to have a certain degree of possessiveness towards their mothers. Chapter 1697. All in all, under Gu Xingyin's insistence, White Tiger and Doll were finally able to get along with each other. Of course, this was what Gu Xingyin saw. She did not notice that White Tiger had become less and less fond of getting close to her. Instead, White Tiger was acting cute with her. It was normal that Gu Xingyin did not notice. After all, she had just come into this body not long ago. Although she had inherited Dean's memories, she did not pay much attention to some of her daily habits. She did not know that on that night, after she fell asleep, Doll, who had been occupying the most intimate position beside her, silently floated out. Then, he found White Tiger, who had turned into a little white tiger model lying on the grass. When the two met, it was like a raging fire. Don't think too much. They fought very straightforwardly. The result of this fight was obvious. Doll won. The result of his victory was that White Tiger was not allowed to get close to Gu Xingyin and act cute in front of her. Master belonged to him and him alone. No one else was allowed to get close to her. White Tiger was very dissatisfied. As a creation, it was innate to be close to its master. However, when the black room behind Doll transformed into a bloody mouth, which meant that if it did not agree, it would directly devour it, White Tiger silently chose to agree. Inspector was different from other things. White Tiger and Doll were both inspectors that had gained consciousness. White Tiger and Doll could devour each other, and the devourer's ability would probably be higher. Therefore, White Tiger tearfully agreed to this humiliating contract for its own life. Doll flew back in a good mood. Then, it rubbed its face against Gu Xingyin's smooth face with a satisfied expression. It opened its eyes and silently looked at her. That White Tiger was an idiot. Doll actually would not devour it at all. This was because he could sense that Master liked that White Tiger. If he devoured it, Master would probably be unhappy again. Dolly was a little worried. She always felt that her master was easily upset over small things. When Master was unhappy, Doll would be unhappy too. He did not like that expression on Master's face. The bottom of his heart was bitter and very uncomfortable. At this moment, the puppet doll did not know that this emotion was called heartache. Over the next few days, Gu Xingyin ordered all the puppets in his residence to leave this place for the time being and go to other places far away. These puppets were not like White Tiger and Doll. They only listened to their master's orders mechanically. They moved forward until Gu Xingyin called for them to stop. Then, without Gu Xingyin's command, they would remain in a standing or walking position until their master gave the next command, or until something happened to their bodies and they could no longer move. Gu Xingyin looked around. After making sure that she didn't miss anything important, she walked out of the valley. She had to go to the imperial capital to take a look. The system said that the eldest son of the Qin family had been like that during this period of time. However, there was an expert guarding him now, so there was no need to worry about that black magic master hurting him a second time. He was temporarily safe. Gu Xingyin searched the wardrobe for a long time. Fortunately, she found a few normal clothes that Dean had never worn before. According to her memory, these were all sent by the enthusiastic customer from before. And the customer was very considerate. According to Dean's appearance, he chose punk style and heavy metal style clothes. In this way, after Gu Xingyin put it on, other people would probably think that she was just a fan of weird and unique styles and dressed up a little exaggeratedly. 8th update. 2 more chapters. See you later. Chapter 1698. Gu Xingyin looked at himself in the mirror. He was wearing a shiny, sequined trench coat and a pair of tight leather pants. His waist-length black hair was tied up in a high ponytail. Speaking of which, she did not even need to put on makeup. Her seductive and cold aura was fully displayed. However, Gu Xingyin still wanted to complain. With such a look, she would definitely attract attention wherever she went. If normal people saw her, they would either think of her as a celebrity or an artist. What if someone took a picture and Chinchichi saw it? After thinking for a while, Gu Xingyin took out a pair of black sunglasses and covered half of her face. Very good. Even if someone took a picture of her, if Chinchichi could recognize her, Gu Xingyin would be convinced. When she was changing her clothes, Doll and White Tiger were chased out by Gu Xingyin. Doll was already floating up and down in the air impatiently. He could completely control this skill now. The door finally opened from the inside. Doll subconsciously looked in the direction of the door. Then, plop. Very unhappily, he came into close contact with the ground again. However, this degree of fall did not pose any danger to him at all. Doll nimbly levitated from the ground and looked at the person in front of him in confusion. As the person was exposed under the sunlight, it was really too eye-catching. He could not help but stretch out his chubby hand and rub his eyes in a very human-like manner. Gu Xingyin. Was it that exaggerated? Doll was stunned to see a stranger coming out of his master's room. Then, he observed carefully. This person's body and aura were exactly the same as his master's. Very delicious, very sweet, the feeling of being connected by blood was also the same. So, the woman in front of him was his master? Gu Xingyin looked at the puppet doll in front of her with a very realistic expression of disdain. White Tiger not far from him also growled softly to express its dissatisfaction. Gu Xingyin, was it really that eye-catching? Actually, Gu Xingyin had misunderstood. Doll and White Tiger were both consciousnesses formed from yin energy. This determined their preferences and habits. As beings of extreme yin, they liked dampness, darkness, and negative emotions. Such an environment. However, Gu Xingyin's shiny outfit made them feel uncomfortable. However, even though Dolly wasn't used to it, after confirming that Gu Xingyin was its master, it quickly floated to Gu Xingyin's shoulder and sat firmly. It also habitually extended its nails to poke Gu Xingyin's earlobe. This was his exclusive seat. Although there was something wrong with his master's taste, as an obedient child, he still had to love his master. Then, Gu Xingyin grabbed him with one hand. Gu Xingyin looked at the doll. He said seriously, "For the rest of the time, you can't sit on my shoulders." Doll was puzzled. Gu Xingyin pointed at him and then at White Tiger. She did not say anything. Instead, she sent a message into their minds. It was to let them know that what they were doing was very strange in normal human society. If they were discovered, the consequences could be very serious. Of course, as the master, it would be very troublesome for her. Doll was very disapproving when he heard the first part. However, when he heard that it would bring trouble to his master, he hesitated for a moment and obediently stopped moving. Chapter 1699. In the end, Gu Xingyin carried a bag that was as cool as her windbreaker and rode the White Tiger out of the valley. When they reached the outskirts of the forest, Gu Xingyin kept the shrunken White Tiger in his bag. As for Doll, she put it in the pocket of her windbreaker. Originally, Gu Xingyin planned to put both of them in her pocket, but Doll got jealous again. He was determined not to let the White Tiger enjoy the same treatment as him. What could Gu Xingyin do? People's hearts were biased, not to mention that the white tiger was not as cute as doll. Therefore, it could only stay in the bag. Here, Gu Xingyin once again thanked the kind-hearted customer who had helped her once. Because Diying grew up in the forest, she did not even have an ID card or a household register. However, the female tycoon who had received her favor and successfully got pregnant and gave birth to a child, after knowing that she had nothing, almost waved her hand and took care of everything for others. Therefore, Gu Xingyin was able to successfully buy a plane ticket to the capital. Diying did not lack money. When Gu Xingyin checked the bank card that had never been used by Diying, she was shocked by the huge amount of money in it. Knowing that she was now an invisible tycoon, Gu Xingyin, of course, did not hesitate to choose the first-class cabin. Then, thanks to her outfit, Gu Xingyin was scrutinized by a lot of people on the plane. There were even 2 people who softly asked for her autograph. Of course, Gu Xingyin directly refused. In the end, in order to avoid embarrassment, she directly put on an eye mask and closed her eyes to rest. Doll was surprisingly quiet throughout the journey. Gu Xingyin shut off her perception of Doll's emotions, so if she did not deliberately feel it, she would not be able to detect his emotions. Doll felt as if there was something burning in his soul. The plane slowly flew forward, getting closer and closer to the capital. And the closer they were to the capital, the stronger the inexplicable feeling became. In the dimly lit pocket, Doll opened his green eyes. He could clearly feel that something was calling out to him from that direction. What is it? He couldn't remember, but it was very important. It was very important. On the other hand, the white tiger in the bag seemed to have sensed the unusual wave of energy coming from the doll. He shrank back a little in fear. Speaking of which, the aura of this fellow was truly terrifying. The white tiger had no doubt that he was no match for the other party. Gu Xingyin fell into a deep sleep. Doll, on the other hand, kept his eyes open. He was very excited and looked forward to the unknown. Gu Xingyin was awakened by Doll. It was not the kind of voice that woke her up, but the doll's stubborn consciousness. It even broke through Gu Xingyin's divine sense defense and appeared in her mind. And that thought was very simple. Gu Xingyin heard it clearly. He craved power. And in the current situation, the most direct and convenient way was Gu Xingyin's blood. Gu Xingyin felt that it was very strange. In fact, except at the beginning, when Doll instinctively sucked her blood when he was just created, although he seemed to desire it, he had never asked for it. But this time, the soul-deep desire surprised Gu Xingyin. Chapter 1700. Gu Xingyin only hesitated for a moment before sending a thought to the doll. She agreed. The doll's reaction was very fast. Almost as soon as the owner agreed and put his hand into his pocket, his sharp teeth pierced into the owner's flesh. This was the feeling. It was incomparably beautiful and mesmerizing. As the blood flowed, the doll could feel a strong force entering his body. He closed his eyes in satisfaction. Gu Xingyin, on the other hand, let Doll go when he sensed that the slight blood loss would not affect him. Slowly, the burning desire in the doll's heart calmed down. What followed was an increasingly strong force in his body and some scattered things that appeared in his mind. Capital, sister. Chen what? His delicate brows were tightly furrowed, as if he was trying hard to recall the things that he should have remembered but was forced to forget. His dark green eyes suddenly opened. He remembered. Chen Biyao. Gu Xingyin felt that the little guy in her pocket did not seem to need her blood anymore. He hugged his finger and licked it gently. In the end, he did not let go. Instead, he used his finger as a tool to grind his teeth and nibbled on it gently. This was not the first time this had happened. Gu Xingyin completely treated it as the doll's behavior. She only smiled and did not say anything. What she didn't know was that her puppet doll had already recalled some things. He was not a self-consciousness formed by the inspector. He was a normal person. His name was Chen Biyao. He had inexplicably fallen into a strange gray place. When he woke up in a daze, he had become a puppet doll that had no consciousness and called someone his master. Chen Biyao's heart was filled with anger. Was it this person? Did she cause him to become like this? But subconsciously, he was certain that it was not this person. This person would not harm him. Then, what had happened to him at that time? He pondered with a gloomy expression. Suddenly, he felt something in his mouth. When he realized what it was, his expression changed. He was nibbling on someone else's finger. He quickly spat out Gu Xingyin's finger and wiped his mouth with his sleeve. Then, he heard a gentle voice in his mind. Are you full? Before his mind could react, the body spontaneously stuck to the hand beside him and even rubbed against it, indicating that he was full. Chen Biyao was speechless. He could not control the urge to get close to her. The corners of Gu Xingyin's lips curled up. Knowing that he was full, he reached out and patted his head comfortingly before pulling his hand away. She raised her finger and looked at it. Well, the small cut was almost invisible. At this moment, Gu Xingyin did not know that her puppet doll was sitting in her pocket with a serious expression on his face. The transportation in modern society was very advanced. Soon, the plane landed in the capital's airport. Gu Xingyin walked out of the airport with many passengers. The feeling in his heart was getting stronger. He wanted to return to the Chen family and see what kind of situation he was in. His body was calling for him. He could feel it. Chapter 1701. Gu Xingyin asked the system to quickly calculate a route to a 5-star hotel not far from the Chen family's residence. She booked a presidential suite for a month and prepared to observe the Chen family's recent situation. Chen Biyao was quite happy when Gu Xingyin chose the location. Because this place was also very close to his destination. He was still thinking about what reason he should find to go to the Chen family's residence. After all, he had signed a contract with this mysterious puppet master. If he did anything unusual, she would definitely notice it immediately. Before he could confirm whether Gu Xingyin was a friend or foe, he didn't dare to be careless. Then, at night, Gu Xingyin gave an order that made Chen Biyao dumbfounded. Go to the Chen family and check on the Chen family's eldest son's current situation. Report his current situation and the Chen family's current situation to me. Chen Biyao was bewildered. He couldn't help but think, could this matter really have something to do with her? Could it be that the person in front of him did this to him? If this was really the case, if he could wake up one day, this culprit who caused him to become like this, Chen Biyao felt a little confused. According to his usual character, if he had a chance to fight back against someone who framed him and almost killed him, he definitely wouldn't let them off. Moreover, he would definitely cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, leaving no trace of trouble for himself. But if the target was the woman in front of him, Chen Biyao's heart actually wavered a little. He couldn't bear for her to die, whether it was because of the power of the contract or because of his feelings in the depths of his mind. He didn't want this woman to disappear. Then, he would break her legs, break her wings, and imprison her in a place where only he could see her. Chen Biyao lowered his eyes and thought so. If Gu Xingyin could listen to her puppet doll's thoughts, she would definitely be able to see a series of very bloody and violent scenes that were not suitable for children. She looked at the motionless puppet doll and felt strange. Doll? Gu Xingyin had a strange feeling. She felt that doll was much more complicated than her other pet, the simple-minded white tiger. Chen Biyao's eyes trembled when he heard the word baby. This kind of strange name, what was it trying to do? He quickly regained his composure and nodded, indicating that he understood. Then, a black mist spread out from his body and enveloped his entire body. In Gu Xingyin's eyes, the doll that was in front of him just a moment ago had suddenly disappeared. All that was left in the air was a small cluster of black mist that was invisible to the naked eye. Even Gu Xingyin had to rely on the connection between her and the puppet bloodline to see his trace. The black fog circled around Gu Xingyin twice before drifting out of the window. At this moment, Chen Biyao wanted to go home and take a look. He urgently wanted to know what his current situation was. Auntie Fong had been a nanny in the Chen family for more than 10 years. She was considered an elder in the Chen family. She had also watched eldest young master grow up. Now that eldest young master had been unconscious for such a long time and was lying on the bed, the other servants felt that eldest young master was hopeless in this lifetime. They also slacked off taking care of him. Chapter 1702. At this time, only Auntie Fong would insist on cleaning the unconscious Chen Biyao every day. She would open the doors and windows regularly to ventilate and tidy the room. On this day, when Auntie Fong opened the window in the morning, a gust of cold wind suddenly brushed past her body. Auntie Fong couldn't help but shiver. She looked up at the sky strangely. It was supposed to be a sunny day, wasn't it? Worried that the cold wind would catch the young master cold, Auntie Fong stood by the window for a while. After confirming that the cold wind was just a coincidence, she left the window. Walking to the bedside, Auntie Fong looked at the handsome man on the bed who looked a little pale because of being bedridden for a long time and sighed. "Young master, you have to hurry and come over. Even an old woman like me can feel that the atmosphere in the house has been very abnormal recently. If you don't come over soon, I'm afraid that the house won't be peaceful in the future." Auntie Fong wasn't worried about herself. At worst, she could just leave when the time came. But if the young master didn't wake up soon, what would happen in the future? What Auntie Fong couldn't see was that at the place where she had just been, hidden behind the curtains, wisps of black fog were swirling around, making the air in that place seem extra gloomy and cold. The puppet doll listened to Auntie Fong's long-winded words for a long time before turning to leave, closing the door behind him. When Auntie Fong went out, she only left the door ajar. When she walked past the corner of the corridor, the door seemed to be pushed by something at the empty entrance. With a click, the door lock automatically buckled. At the same time, the wisps of black fog by the curtains slowly condensed in front of the bed. Slowly, they formed the shape of a human baby in midair. It was the puppet doll, or rather, Chen Biyao now. Chen Biyao slowly looked at his body on the bed. At such a close distance, he felt very strange. He could feel the current state of his body, as if his consciousness was still in his body, but he couldn't control this body. The person on the bed was clearly not in a good state. Even if there was someone taking care of him carefully, the long period of bedridden had made this body weak and weak. The puppet doll Chen Biyao carefully approached the window. Then, he reached out a hand and gently touched his body. He could feel his body calling out to him. The moment his hand touched Chen Biyao's body on the bed, there seemed to be a strong pulling force from that body. Puppet doll Chen Biyao was overjoyed. He did not resist and allowed this phenomenon to be discovered without hesitation. Perhaps this was the opportunity for him to return to his own body. However, reality proved that the matter of the soul returning to its original place was not that simple. Chen Biyao could clearly feel his soul enter his body, but it was expelled in a moment. It was as if his body had started to reject the entry of his soul. He didn't believe in such a thing. He persevered and tried again, but it still didn't work. After many attempts, Chen Biyao finally accepted his fate. He was sure that if he couldn't find someone to help him, he wouldn't be able to return to his body on his own. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Gu Xingyin's figure subconsciously appeared. Chapter 1703. There was a saying that when a person was in trouble, the first person he would turn to for help would be the person he trusted the most at the bottom of his heart. Chen Biyao didn't expect that when he was in trouble, the person he would turn to wasn't his biological father or his good friend. Instead, it was the woman he had only known for a short 10 days. It was a strange feeling. However, Chen Biyao shook his head in the end. He wanted to trust her, but who knew if he could trust her? Since he couldn't return to his body, there was no point in staying here any longer. Chen Biyao looked around and didn't find anything wrong with the room he was in. Then, he turned into a dark room and left. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he wandered around the Chen family. Speaking of which, he had been in a daze for so long. He didn't know how the Chen family was doing. As soon as he came out, Chen Biyao saw his father. Old Master Chen was wearing a dark red tang suit and holding a wooden walking stick. He was in high spirits and was politely chatting with an old man with a calm expression. Hearing how his father addressed him, Chen Biyao knew in his heart that this was probably another person from the metaphysics school. Although this person from the Xian sect looked calm, he didn't hide the arrogance in his eyes. Chen Biyao only glanced at him and lost interest. In his opinion, this person from the Xian sect looked like an expert. Even he could kill 5 of them by himself. He was most likely another person who pretended to be mysterious and fished for fame. From what he heard, his father must have thought a lot before inviting this master over, hoping that he could wake up his eldest son. Chen Biyao didn't have any hope in this matter. He just felt sorry for his father. Obviously, old Master Chen still hadn't given up on his son. He watched as the master entered his room calmly. After seeing him, he was hesitant. Then, he was shocked. In the end, his expression was very ugly. This. Not only Chen Biyao, but old Master Chen could also see that there was nothing he could do. In the end, the master only said a lot of things that normal people wouldn't understand. Then, he took the Chen family's generous reward and left. Chen Biyao watched quietly as his father locked himself in the study. He didn't follow. Perhaps someone like his father didn't want anyone to see him in such a weak state. Chen Biyao continued to walk around the house. When he passed by one of the rooms, he suddenly heard something that made his eyes turn cold. This was the room of his biological sister, Qin Chichi. At this time, Qin Chichi was talking to someone. The black fog ignored the tightly shut door and went straight in. Qin Chichi was sitting on the bed in the room, holding her phone in one hand and tugging at the bedsheets in boredom with the other. Yes, the old man sent someone over again today, but it seems to be useless. Her tone was very cheerful when she said this. He didn't know what the other side said, but Chen Biyao could roughly guess that they were proud of themselves. Because he immediately heard Qin Chichi say, "Yes, yes, yes, my dear, you're really amazing. Well, not only are you good at black magic, in bed, you're even better." Chen Biyao listened expressionlessly. His heart was strangely calm when he found out that his own sister was the one who tried to kill him. He even had a feeling that this was indeed the case. Chapter 1704. Chen Biyao stared coldly at Qin Chichi, who had her back to him. He didn't hesitate at all. With a thought, a cloud of black fog shrouded Qin Chichi. What was the point of keeping a sister who wanted to kill him for her own selfish desires? Qin Chichi felt a chill all over her body. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave in an instant, and couldn't help but scream. The person on the other side of the phone sensed that something was wrong and hurriedly asked her what was wrong. Since Qin Chichi met this taming master, she had become a firm believer in metaphysics and fortune-telling. She didn't dare to hide anything from him and hurriedly told him about her current situation. The taming master was conceited, and he was very infatuated with Qin Chichi's debauchery in bed. When he heard Qin Chichi's request, he naturally asked her to go to the living room, a place with stronger yang energy, and he would immediately rush over. This was exactly what Chen Biyao wanted. Chen Biyao didn't leave. Qin Chichi listened to the taming master and sat in the living room. He also hid in a corner in the shape of a cloud of black fog. Now the yin energy had completely entered Qin Chichi's body. She had put on a coat, but she still felt very cold. The taming master quickly entered the room. The servants at home didn't let him in at first. Qin Chichi said angrily, "This is my friend. Do you know how to do things? If not, get out of the Qin family." She looked at the taming master expectantly. "Dear, please take a look at me. What's wrong with me?" She couldn't help shivering as she spoke. The taming master reached out and touched Qin Chichi's hand. It was May, but Qin Chichi's hand was as cold as ice. He winked at Qin Chichi. She understood and stood up. The two of them went upstairs to Qin Chichi's room. Seeing this scene, the servants at home just sighed and shook their heads, as if they didn't like Mrs. behavior. Chen Biyao followed them coldly. He put the yin energy on Qin Chichi's body just now to draw out the person behind the scenes. Now he finally saw the real face of the person behind the scenes. The other party was a man who looked to be in his 30s. Previously, he was wearing a baseball cap when he came in. Now that he had taken off his cap, one could clearly see the dense runes engraved on his bald head. Chen Biyue instantly thought of the runes on his puppet. The two were obviously not on the same page. However, Chen Biyue felt an evil and powerful force from this man. This should be the black magic that this man practiced. When the taming master was about to examine Chen Qiqi, he suddenly frowned and glanced in the direction where Chen Biyue was hiding. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt as if he was being watched by some ferocious beast. But when he sensed it carefully, he found that the feeling was gone. Chen Biyue stood there quietly, allowing him to size him up. Not to mention the fact that he didn't have a physical body at the moment, it wasn't easy for him to be discovered. Even if a tame headmaster sensed it, he would only be able to sense a ball of Yin energy. It was too shocking for Yin specters to gain self-awareness. Even a Yin lady like Yin only had one white tiger by her side. As for the puppet doll, it was an exception. Chen Biyue felt his hands itching. If they weren't in the Chen family, he didn't want to disturb his father. He wanted to kill this man and woman at any time. Chapter 1705. Gu Xingyin looked at the puppet doll in surprise. How long had it been since it was created? It could actually speak human language. She was so happy that she quickly shouted, "Doll, come here." Chen Biyue opened his green eyes and looked at the naked body and the warm water in the pool. He was thinking. Should he go down? Or should he go down? However, just as he was thinking, Gu Xingyin finally remembered her current state. She couldn't bear her body in front of a self-aware doll, even if it was just a puppet. So she directly said, "Turn around, doll." When she said this, she had a commanding tone, like an adult talking to a naughty child. Then, under the effect of the contract, the puppet doll turned around without any resistance. Puppet Chen Biyue doll. When his body was finally under his control, he found that the person opposite him had put on a bathrobe and walked out of the pool. Chen Biyue looked at the person wrapped up tightly. In his lowered green eyes, there was a trace of regret. Gu Xingyin didn't notice. Of course, this was mostly because she didn't think that her little puppet doll could think of such complicated things. After resting and relaxing, it was time to get down to business. She sat on the bed and asked the puppet doll, "What did you see today?" If the puppet doll didn't have its own consciousness, Gu Xingyin would directly enter its consciousness and extract its memories. But now, Gu Xingyin thought that since the puppet doll had its own consciousness, it had become an independent individual. In this way, he could already be considered a special life form. Since it was a life form, it should be treated with enough respect. So, Gu Xingyin asked Chen Biyue. Her action made Chen Biyue sigh in relief. If she directly extracted the memories, the fact that he was Chen Biyue's soul couldn't be hidden from Gu Xingyin. Although he didn't think what would happen if this was known by the person in front of him, after the awkward meeting in the pool just now, he still felt a little strange. And most importantly, if she directly extracted the memories, his shameful thoughts, Chen Biyue put aside those distracting thoughts and slowly began to transmit everything he saw in the Chen family directly to Gu Xingyin's mind. Because it was his own choice, he omitted some things about his identity that Gu Xingyin didn't need to know. Gu Xingyin seemed to use the puppet doll's eyes to experience everything that Chen Biyue saw in the whole night. In fact, Gu Xingyin herself knew most of the things happened. Based on the puppet doll's probing, she could roughly tell that this taming master was no match for her at all. In this case, she thought silently and couldn't help but mutter, "What kind of excuse should I find to try and wake up the eldest young master of the Chen family?" She didn't notice that the puppet doll was shocked when it heard this. She actually wanted to wake it up. There was nothing more surprising than this. Gu Xingyin felt that her arm was poked. She looked down in confusion and found that a memory in her mind was repeated. There were only 7 chapters today. I really couldn't write any more. There was a notice of leave at the top of the book review and comments section. I'll make up for it tomorrow. I'm really sorry. Chapter 1706. Gu Xingyin didn't understand. She looked through her memories. It was the scene of old man Chen politely accompanying a person from the Xian sect. At first, Gu Xingyin didn't understand what the doll meant. But after thinking for a bit, her eyes lit up. She looked at the doll. You're saying that you want me to recommend myself? Take the initiative to go to them? The doll nodded heavily. Chen Biyao knew that his father wouldn't be willing to give up any chance at this time. In old man Chen's eyes, the only suitable successor was his eldest son, Chen Biyao. This wasn't because he favored sons over daughters. He just understood his own children. His eldest son, Chen Biyao, was first class in both ability and temperament. If he took over the Chen family, he might be able to push the Chen family to another peak. As for his daughter, Chen Qiqi, she was ruthless but lacked ability. Her vision was also a bit lacking. When Chen Biyao fell, the most anxious person was old man Chen. He knew very well that the Chen family had countless branches. Some of the more ambitious ones were eyeing the current Chen family. He could still suppress them now. If he was 100 years old, his eldest son would be fine, but his youngest daughter Qiqi. He wouldn't be able to suppress those greedy people. So these days, old man Chen had been sparing no effort to find an expert, hoping to wake his eldest son up. Gu Xingyin lowered her head and thought for a bit. She felt that this was feasible. She smiled at the doll and praised it. Doll, you're really amazing. The puppet doll just stared at Gu Xingyin with its green eyes. It flew over to her and perched on her shoulder, playing with her hair. Gu Xingyin didn't rest well the entire night. She was a bit tired and fell asleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. Chen puppet doll Biyao sat on her pillow and looked down at the person who was sleeping with her eyes closed. She was still the same. Her face was pale and her lips were purplish. She looked like a decadent but beautiful poppy, luring humans to be attracted to her like moths to a flame. Chen Biyao was the one who was seduced. He remained motionless, staring at the person on the bed over and over again as if he was possessed. It was as if he would never get tired of looking at her. After an unknown amount of time, Chen Biyao suddenly bent down. His body was too small. Even though he was sitting on the pillow, there was still some distance between him and Gu Xingyin's face. He crawled forward with his hands and feet. After crawling a few times, he finally came into contact with the person sleeping on the pillow. Chen Biyao gently grabbed Gu Xingyin's hair with his small hand. Finally, he kissed Gu Xingyin's face. It felt so good. He grinned contentedly. The system that didn't need to rest as well, his hands were itching, but he had to endure it. Fortunately, after kissing Gu Xingyin, Chen Biyao didn't do anything else. His small body curled up in the side of Gu Xingyin's neck. He closed his eyes and pretended to fall asleep with her. When Gu Xingyin woke up, it was already afternoon. She stretched lazily and tidied herself up. Then, she walked straight to the Chen family's house. Of course, the white tiger and the puppet doll were still in her pocket. When old Master Chen heard that someone wanted to see him, he felt a bit strange. The housekeeper said, "That guest looks a bit strange." She said that she came for young master. Chapter 1707. Old Master Chen's expression changed when he heard this. He personally walked to the door with his walking stick. When Gu Xingyin was alone in the hotel with the puppet, she would subconsciously reveal a trace of her nature. However, in front of outsiders, she would definitely maintain her noble and cold persona to the point that not even a drop of water could leak out. Old Master Chen looked at Gu Xingyin. He had some doubts in his heart. After all, Gu Xingyin did not look like a good person. But who was he? No matter what he thought in his heart, he would not show it on his face. Moreover, old Master Chen had more contact with people like Gu Xingyin. He knew that some masters liked to pursue some unique styles, so he quickly recovered. He said politely, "I heard that master is here for my son. May I know how to address you?" Gu Xingyin's expression was indifferent, like the ice and snow on the cold mountain that never melted all year round. Her voice was equally cold. "Dean, I can save your son." Chen Biyao sat in Gu Xingyin's pocket. Although his eyes were covered by the pocket, he could clearly see Gu Xingyin's appearance at this time. He had never seen his master like this. It was hard to imagine that such an arrogant, indifferent, and insufferably arrogant person was the same person who would laugh and stretch in private. Old Master Chen politely welcomed them into the house and ordered someone to serve tea. He asked straightforwardly, "Master Dean, which faction do you belong to? Do you have any requests that I can make?" Asking about Gu Xingyin's faction was just a casual question. The last sentence was the main point. Old Master Chen, who had lived for so many years, was not a young and impetuous boy. Naturally, he would not believe that a pie would fall from the sky. In his opinion, the person in front of him must have a request for the Qin family since she took the initiative to come to him and said that she could save his son. He never believed that there would be a great philanthropist in the world who would give without asking for anything in return. However, it was obvious that Gu Xingyin was going to make him miscalculate. She still had that cold expression on her face, and the words that came out of her mouth carried a hint of mockery. "There's nothing in your house that I'm interested in. I'm willing to cure your son today because I'm happy." Old Master Chen, he didn't deny that he was a little unhappy when he heard the other party's first sentence. After all, the other party's words were simply criticizing the Qin clan as if they were worthless. However, when he heard Gu Xingyin's second sentence, he began to have doubts again. What kind of reason was that? He carefully raised his head and looked at Gu Xingyin, but he could not find any clues from her expression. He knew that some people in the celestial sect of wonders were eccentric. They spoke and did things according to their own preferences. Could it be that this person was also one of those people? Gu Xingyin felt Old Master Chen's gaze and her voice suddenly became colder. Although her voice was cold, the bystanders could still tell that it was just her way of speaking. However, Old Master Chen could hear that the other party was a little unhappy from the tone of her voice. "If it weren't for the fact that I don't like the person who did it behind my back, what do you think the Qin family has that's worth me doing it personally?" Gu Xingyin flicked her sleeves coldly and said, "Since you're worried about my purpose, why should I come here to annoy you?" Chapter 1708. As she spoke, she actually lifted her foot and walked out without hesitation. Old Master Chen was shocked. He couldn't care about anything else and hurriedly walked up. He stopped Gu Xingyin and even bent down to apologize for his previous behavior. "Master, it's my fault for neglecting you. Please don't be angry." Gu Xingyin looked at him with a faint smile and said, "I just feel hungry. You need to know something. For example, if I really want to do something to young Master Chen and the Qin family, I don't need to come here personally." Old Master Chen knew that he was still angry because of his suspicion. He hurriedly apologized. In fact, Gu Xingyin just wanted to protect the character setting of Diyin. She didn't like to see an old man in his 50s grovel in front of her. So she softened her expression. "No need to apologize. Anyway, after this incident, we won't have any more interactions." Old Master Chen was delighted when he heard this. Judging from this master's words, she should agree to save his son. Chen Biyao had been quietly staying in the pocket. He watched as his father bowed and apologized to a stranger for his sake. After all, that was his father. He blamed Gu Xingyin. Why was she so cold? But on second thought, Diyin and Chen Biyao were just two strangers who didn't know each other. Diyin was willing to save him. No matter what the purpose was, it was a great favor for the Qin family. Moreover, it was obvious that she was like this outside. People with abilities always had privileges. When their abilities were questioned, it was normal for them to be unhappy. Chen Biyao was still letting his imagination run wild. Gu Xingyin had already walked back into the living room of the Qin family. Gu Xingyin was not in the mood to make small talk. "Take me to see her." Old Master Chen personally led Gu Xingyin upstairs. At this time, the door below was opened. Qin Chichi, who was wearing a black professional dress, came back from outside with a bag. She immediately spotted Gu Xingyin, who was walking beside her father. Qin Chichi knew Diyin. At that time, she personally asked Diyin to help, but Diyin rejected her. Now, why did she come to the Qin family? Could it be that he wanted to expose what he had done? Qin Chichi shouted, "Dad!" Grandpa Chen turned around and smiled apologetically at Gu Xingyin. "That's my second daughter." Gu Xingyin did not say anything. Qin Chichi rushed upstairs and looked at Gu Xingyin warily. However, she asked Old Master Chen, "Dad, who is this person?" Grandpa Chen said, "This is a master. He's here for your brother's health." Qin Chichi's heart trembled. She had approached Dean because she had heard of his reputation. Father actually managed to get Dean to help? Could this person really be able to cure his brother? Moreover, she knew what she wanted to do at that time. Although Qin Chichi did not say that he was targeting her brother, Qin Chichi felt that he could definitely guess it based on Qin Biyue's current situation. She could not let her father believe Dean. Qin Chichi glanced at Gu Xingyin and said to Grandpa Chen, "Father, do you know the background of these so-called masters? This person looks..." Grandpa Chen shouted in a low voice, "Shut up." Chapter 1709. Old Master Chen looked at Gu Xingyin nervously. He had seen the master's temper before. What if his daughter angered the master again with her words? But this time, Gu Xingyin made him confused again. Because she was not angry at all. Not only was she not angry, but she looked at Qin Chichi with a meaningful smile on her face. This was the first time Old Master Chen saw Master Dean smile since he saw her today. But Qin Chichi did not feel that the smile was friendly at all. Instead, she felt as if an endless chill was being released from that smile, corroding every inch of her body. She couldn't help but shudder. Then, Gu Xingyin said, "Are you in a hurry to stop me because you feel guilty?" As soon as she said this, the faces of the other two people present darkened. Qin Chichi flew into a rage out of humiliation, while Old Master Chen's expression was unreadable. Qin Chichi was afraid that her father would doubt her because of Gu Xingyin's words, so she hurriedly explained, "Don't talk nonsense. Why would I feel guilty? I can't wait for my brother to get better as soon as possible. But you don't look like a decent master at all. In my opinion, you're clearly..." "Qin Chichi." Old Master Chen shouted sternly to stop her. Qin Chichi quieted down. Old Master Chen said in a deep voice, "I'm going to ask the master to take a look at your brother. Go back to your room now. Don't make trouble without my permission." Qin Chichi was a little unwilling. She said that she wanted to watch from the side. But before Gu Xingyin could say anything, Old Master Chen refused. Qin Chichi could only go back unwillingly. Gu Xingyin followed Old Master Chen into Qin Biyue's room. The room was very clean and there was no unpleasant atmosphere. Obviously, this young master was well taken care of at home. Gu Xingyin walked to Qin Biyue's bed. Looking at his closed eyes, she suddenly bent down. Old Master Chen was shocked, and so was the puppet doll in Gu Xingyin's pocket. Because when Gu Xingyin leaned over, it really looked like she was going to kiss Qin Biyue, who was lying on the bed. But Gu Xingyin did not. When she was still some distance away from Qin Biyue's face, she stopped. There was no smell at all. "It's not him." Gu Xingyin straightened up and began to observe the person in front of him. Old Master Chen heaved a sigh of relief. He thought to himself that he must have been overthinking things just now. This master was clearly a cold and emotionless person. How could he have, discordant thoughts towards his own son? The puppet doll in Gu Xingyin's pocket was different. The moment he saw Gu Xingyin bending over, he almost jumped up in shock. Could it be that he and Diane knew each other, and there was some story that he had to tell before? Otherwise, it was hard to understand why she came all the way to the capital to save him. The puppet doll thought happily. But he really did not have any memory of knowing Diane. Moreover, he had never been to that valley, so it was impossible for him to know Diane. Seeing Gu Xingyin straightened up again without any expression and did not kiss him, the puppet doll felt a sense of regret. Then, he was once again shocked by Gu Xingyin's words. Gu Xingyin said faintly, "Take off his clothes." Chapter 1710. There were only two people in the room. Gu Xingyin couldn't take off a man's clothes by herself. Of course, her words were directed at Old Master Chen. Old Master Chen didn't react for a moment. He looked at Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin repeated her words. "If it's not convenient for you, you can find an outsider to take it off." Old Master Chen was sure that Gu Xingyin was really going to take off his son's clothes. He thought about it and didn't let anyone in. Instead, he walked forward himself. Because he had been in bed for a long time, Chen Biyao was wearing a set of convenient pajamas. It was easier to take them off. Old Master Chen took off his outerwear and looked hesitantly at Gu Xingyin, who was looking down. Gu Xingyin's voice didn't fluctuate at all. It was as if the person in front of her was just a stone or a blade of grass, not a naked man. Take it all off. Old Master Chen was silent for a moment. Then, he took off his eldest son's clothes. The puppet doll that had been lying in Gu Xingyin's pocket. An inexplicable sense of shame surged in his mind. This thought came too suddenly and was too strong. Chen Biyao couldn't control himself and was caught by Gu Xingyin. Chen Biyao's entire body froze. He was afraid that Gu Xingyin would be suspicious. However, Gu Xingyin didn't suspect him. She thought that the puppet doll had never seen a naked human body before, so it was embarrassed. She comforted the puppet doll. Doll, don't be afraid. It's just a normal human body. Doll is like this too. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, Chen Biyao knew that she didn't suspect him. He sighed in relief. Then, the doll, who finally had time to think about other things, felt frustrated again. She didn't have any reaction to his body at all. Not to mention that she liked to be praised, she didn't even feel shy. Chen Biyao felt like he had failed. Just as he was about to reflect on his lack of charm, he saw Gu Xingyin walk up to him, and then, Chen Biyao's eyes widened. On the other side, Old Master Chen, who had been paying close attention to this side, also gasped. Gu Xingyin's hand started from the forehead of the person on the bed. Her index finger and middle finger slowly slid down. If it wasn't for Gu Xingyin's cold expression, as if she was just evaluating a lifeless object, her attitude would definitely be related to lust. Chen Biyao felt like he was about to burn up. Although he wasn't in his own body right now, he felt as if his soul was being ignited by Gu Xingyin's actions. He could not help but look at Gu Xingyin. This glance made his burning mind sober up quite a bit. Because Gu Xingyin's expression didn't show any emotion. It was as if the adult male body in front of her was no different from a weed by the roadside. At this moment, her hand had already reached Chen Biyao's heart. Then, her fingers paused. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. Old Master Chen watched in horror. This master's fingers suddenly bent, and the purple-black long nails sank into his son's heart just like that. He didn't even have time to speak before he ran over. With such a sharp nail piercing into his chest, could his son still be saved? Chapter 17:11. Gu Xingyin naturally saw Old Master Chen's actions. Don't come over. Old Master Chen didn't listen at all. That was his son. Gu Xingyin shouted in a low voice, "White tiger." A tiger's roar suddenly sounded in the room. A huge white tiger suddenly appeared in front of Old Master Chen. It was almost as tall as a normal person's chest. The tiger stood firmly in front of Old Master Chen. It arched its body and directly carried him to stand far away by the door. Old Master Chen opened his mouth and wanted to scold. He hated himself for not recognizing people clearly and causing harm to his son. His gaze fell on Gu Xingyin, but he suddenly paused. He didn't see any blood coming out from his son's wound. Gu Xingyin's 5 fingers were almost all inserted into Chen Biyao's chest. The situation was very similar to the legendary demon's heart. In such a situation, it should have been bloody. Old Master Chen didn't see any blood and his heart calmed down a little. Then, he saw Gu Xingyin's hand move. She slowly pulled her fingers out. As her fingers pulled out, Old Master Chen could clearly see that a thin black line seemed to be grasped by Gu Xingyin's hand. Slowly, it was pulled out of his son's heart. That thin line was still dancing crazily as if it had a life of its own. Old Master Chen was a little shocked when he saw it. However, Gu Xingyin grabbed it tightly with one hand and pulled it out. The thin line completely left Chen Biyao's body and appeared in the air. After it was exposed in the air, it suddenly disappeared as if it had met its natural enemy. However, Gu Shengyin could see it. Seeing that it was still trying to drill into the only normal person present, Old Master Chen, Gu Shengyin snorted coldly, "White tiger." The white tiger roared and suddenly opened its mouth. A huge suction force appeared in the void and completely swallowed the cluster of black fog that was almost invisible to the naked eye. Old Master Chen looked at this scene in shock. Although he had always been interested in metaphysics, this was the first time he had come into such close contact with it. Remembering something, he hurriedly ran out from behind the white tiger and ran to Chen Biyue's bed to look at him. Her son's chest was clean and smooth. Where was the slightest trace of injury? Knowing that he had misunderstood the master, Old Master Chen blamed himself. "I was really anxious just now. I'm really sorry for disturbing the master." Gu Shengyin waved her hand. "No need." The puppet doll had been watching silently. Even when Gu Shengyin's fingers reached into its body, it did not react at all. He knew that Gu Shengyin was trying to save him. When he saw what Gu Shengyin pulled out of his body, he finally understood why his body had been rejecting him earlier. It wasn't just because he had been separated from his soul for too long. More importantly, the existence of this thing was rejecting him. Old Master Chen came back to his senses and asked with lingering fear, "Master, that black thing just now, what was it?" Any normal person would feel a chill down their spine when they saw that thing drilling into a person's body. However, Gu Shengyin said, "You can put on your clothes now." Old Master Chen was stunned for a moment before he reacted. His son was still lying on the bed naked. He bent down to put on his son's clothes and heard the master slowly say, "He was bewitched."